revisions?
I make a motion we approve November 5th minutes as presented.
Thank you, Jimmy. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Are we good? No roll call? Any opposed? Okay, so if no one's opposed, we don't have to roll call. All right, how about the meeting minutes from December 7th? Does anybody have any comments or revisions, or do we have a motion?
Make a motion we approve those minutes as well as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Holly. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, meetings are approved, and we can move on to the agenda items. Agenda item A is the Stormwater Management Program Plan, and I believe Kim Burmeister is going to lead us through that.
Would you mind making a
Yes,
quick
hello.
announcement for
Sure.
the two items that were?
I think you guys have.
Oh, at the beginning. Okay, we have two
Wait
items.
just a second, Kim.
Management program.
Kim, hold on just a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's really hard to hear you. I just need to interject. Hunter wanted me to let everyone know that we do have two items that have been taken off the agenda. So if you're calling in for these items, we don't want to waste your time. Item G, ZC 2005 has been tabled and will not be considered tonight. And in old new business, item SD 20.45, the Mosley Estate Farms, has been removed from the agenda.
You said item G,
Item G is the first one,
the
public.
Donna Dowsey?
Yes.
Okay, that's tabled.
At the request of the applicant.
All right. And
And then the,
old business, Mosley Farm?
yes, sir. First one.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Kim,
Yes.
you can take us through it.
Okay. So we have the 2021 Stormwater Management Program Plan, which is a component of our MS4 stormwater permit to discharge stormwater to Mobile Bay. And we have a short 5-minute video to show you that kind of goes through the process very quickly, and we're going to roll with that.
Just a quick mic check. Was everyone able to hear that audio?
Yes.
Barely.
Everybody but us.
Yeah.
Okay, just a moment. I don't know if it's a function of my audio, so we're just going to let it roll.
Is there audio with this video?
Okay, they can't hear the video.
We in trouble.
I think some people
We're
are
in trouble
talking in
for
the
the
background.
agenda.
Can you not hear the audio?
I don't
We
hear
won't be able to
any.
hear.
We can't hear anything either.
Well, maybe Lee picked a good one to miss.
Mhm.
Maybe Lee picked a good one to.
All right, Kim Buford, let's have an alternative means here. We will make that video available on our website and send a link out, or put it in the minutes, the
Okay.
link to that in the minutes for next month so that it is publicly available. We're still in a little bit of a quandary. We were hoping to kill 5 minutes there. So we've got two choices, Commissioners. We can move forward with a little bit of an audio problem and just try to stay quiet in here to hear them, or we can pause and wait on IT backup to see if we can get the audio.
So let's move forward and just
Try it out.
do the best we can.
Okay. We do have the agenda item 1, the applicants here, so if there's any questions. we can at least get those. Buford will be presenting that.
So are we gonna approve this?
We
We're
do need to
approving
do-
the document, not the
Yes.
video. I mean, the video is just some information.
That's correct. That's usually an informative process, so we will need to approve that for this year and run through those.
But we could hear Kim. Could Kim?
I was gonna ask the
You know,
same thing, yeah.
can
I
she,
can give y'all a
does she need to?
That would be great if there's anything you'd like to,
Sure. Rebecca, can you hear me okay?
we can if we really listen and nobody sneezes.
Can you turn the air
For
on?
those of you that aren't familiar with the Stormwater Management Program Plan, it's a component of the stormwater permit from ADM to discharge stormwater into the bay. And every year, we have to renew or approve as is the stormwater plan that we had from last year. Every year we make minor changes. The only changes this year from last year, we added an impaired stream as per the 303D list provided by ADM. Turkey Branch is now on the 303D list, and we have a small part of Turkey Branch in our city limits watersheds, small piece of the airport. We added a management flow chart. We increased our watershed acreage. We listed stormwater allowances. We added a tentative monitoring map where we are going to be doing water testing, bacteriological water testing in-house. And probably the biggest change is that how we're doing our outfall assessments in the field. We're using an automated program with our cell phones, which makes it a lot quicker to get out there and look at all of our outfalls into the gullies and the bay. And of course, with good housekeeping and municipal operations, we've added a renewal for pesticide license in staff, which they already exist. They have to renew them every 3 years. So the document, the Stormwater Management Program Plan, the document revolves around 5 minimum control measures. The first is public education and involvement on stormwater impacts. These are, the minimum control measures are items we have to address as per the Stormwater Management Plan, as per item. So the first is the public education and involvement. The second is illicit discharge detection and elimination. The third is construction site stormwater runoff control. Fourth is post-construction stormwater management. And the fifth is good housekeeping for how we run our municipal operations. Each one of these municipal control measures has a lot of requirements in itself. And it's all in the packet that you have, the Stormwater Management Plan, which is basically the same one we had last year, except for the changes that I noted. Do you have any questions on the program or what we've listed?
No, I do not. Does anyone else? Those all sound like great improvements, to help y'all's capacity. So excited to hear them.
Okay.
The most questions we have are usually, well, not the most questions, but we hear a lot about the construction stormwater management from concerned
Right.
citizens. So the more tools y'all have to enforce that, and to make it.
Aren't familiar with the Stormwater Management Program Plan, it's a component of the stormwater permit from ADM to discharge stormwater into the bay. And every year, we have to renew or approve as is the stormwater plan that we had from last year. Every year we make minor changes. The only changes this year from last year, we added an impaired stream as per the 303D list provided by ADM. Turkey Branch is now on the 303D list, and we have a small part of Turkey Branch in our city limits watersheds, small piece of the airport. We added a management flow chart. We increased our watershed acreage. We listed stormwater allowances. We added a tentative monitoring map where we are going to be doing water testing, bacteriological water testing in-house. And probably the biggest change is that how we're doing our outfall assessments in the field. We're using an automated program with our cell phones, which makes it a lot quicker to get out there and look at all of our outfalls into the gullies and the bay. And of course, with good housekeeping and municipal operations, we've added a renewal for pesticide license in staff, which they already exist. They have to renew them every 3 years. So the document, the Stormwater Management Program Plan, the document revolves around 5 minimum control measures. The first is public education and involvement on stormwater impacts. These are, the minimum control measures are items we have to address as per the Stormwater Management Plan, as per item. So the first is the public education and involvement. The second is illicit discharge detection and elimination. The third is construction site stormwater runoff control. Fourth is post-construction stormwater management, and the fifth is good housekeeping for how we run our municipal operations. Each one of these municipal control measures has a lot of requirements in itself, and it's all in the packet that you have, the stormwater management plan, which is basically the same one we had last year, except for the changes that I noted. Do you have any questions on the program or what we've listed?
No, I do not. Does anyone else? Those all sound like great improvements, to help y'all's capacity. So excited to hear them.
Okay.
The most questions we have are usually, well, not the most questions, but we hear a lot about the construction stormwater management from concerned citizens. So the more tools y'all have to enforce that and to make it easier to enforce and more effective, the better.
Yep, we're beefing up our ordinances every year with the erosion and sediment control, and different parts of that ordinance are being, strengthened every year.
Awesome. Does anybody have any comments, or do we have a motion?
I would move that we approve, you need approval, stormwater management program update.
Second?
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So it is hereby approved. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. And these, by the way, these documents are available online as well under our the Planning Department publications and forms. We're required to keep the updated copies of the stormwater management plan and the annual report that tells how we comply with these goals. All of that's online as well.
Okay, and the video will be included in the minutes from this session, if anyone wants to see it. Okay, well, it seems like maybe our audio problem is solved, so that will make the rest of this much easier. So we're moving on to item SD 20.54. Hunter, are you going to?
That's going to be you.
Oh,
That was
Buford?
mine. Good afternoon, everyone. Buford King. So I have the estates at Verandas. This is a preliminary plat. Can everyone see my slides?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So, Commissioners, you'll recall you've seen this before as a village subdivision, and we're here today with the preliminary plat. You have your maps before you. This, of course, is on the south side of 104, just east of 181, developed by Mr. Cordy and Mr. Bigler. And we'll just go very briefly through the background. As we said earlier, the village subdivision for this was approved in November of last year. And so before you today is phase 1, which would be 14 lots, a total of 15 lots, including the remnant parcel. The total development would be 49 lots, as you see there on screen. Extremely low development density. A couple of notes: the green space is not required on this development. That was handled in the village subdivision. This is in unzoned Baldwin County. This is not requested to come into the city. It is in the planning jurisdiction, police jurisdiction, and permit jurisdiction of Fairhope. Mr. Britt with Dewberry is the engineer of record. You see Mr. Germain there as the surveyor of record, also with Dewberry. We can come back to this, Commissioners, if we need to. This is the basic information about the development. Being a village subdivision, we went through it in super great detail then. We can revisit any of those items if we need to. The minimum lot size on this development is 3 acres. Here's the overall development area, and just as a reminder, Commissioners, the Verandas Phase 2 and Phase 4 is built and houses are under construction. So this is now the estates at Verandas. The previous Phase 1 and Phase 3 of Verandas is superseded by what you're seeing today. And then this is just zooming in on the 14 lots, 15 including the remnant parcel that is up for consideration today. Commissioners, the village subdivisions are a little complicated, and so something that we're trying here on these more complicated developments is having a series of assumptions that are built into the recommendation of approval and the conditions of approval that you're accustomed to seeing. So These are not action items for the commission, but these are things that are part of the recommendation of approval. So the assumptions you see here on screen were more fully described in your staff report. And then the conditions of approval are your action items that we'll go through right now. So the traffic report does require installing turn lanes off of Highway 104. This condition of approval makes certain that those are built prior to final plat of this phase. We have a couple of routine waiver requests that have to be done as a waiver because of the subdivision regulations, but things that we discussed during the village subdivision. So the street lights are going to be slightly more than 15 feet tall. We're asking for the approval of a waiver of that. Also, we won't get too much in the weeds on it, commissioners, or in the ditch, but there's some side slopes that had to be gone through a condition of approval, which you see is item number 3 right there. One thing we did want to point out, there are some pending wetland crossings that are going through Corps of Engineers approval. So what we are doing is here memorializing that land disturbance won't occur until that permitting process has been complete through the Corps of Engineers and also to the satisfaction of the City of Fairhope building official. Landscape buffer around the retention pond, that we do that before final plat. Something that was discussed during the village subdivision was restricting re-subdivision of these lots, and that's just a routine note that didn't make it into the plat at this stage. Entrance sign feature just memorializes what we discussed during the village subdivision. I wanted to be very clear that the sidewalks along Highway 104 get installed. There won't be sidewalks internal, but to make certain that the sidewalks along 104 and the footbridge connecting to phase 2 and 4 are done at final plat. The tree notes that you see right there, putting them at 100-foot intervals, making certain that is memorialized. And that is it, commissioners. Happy to answer any questions on behalf of staff. And then we have the engineer of record with us here tonight.
Does staff have any questions for
Buford, this is Art. Go back to the street lights. Tell me, refresh me, please, what was they want to go to 17 feet, is that it, not to exceed?
So commissioners, and this is something we need, we'll address this on a future amendment to the subdivision regulations, but when you're dealing with Riviera Utilities and Baldwin EMC, their standard off-the-shelf street light is taller than 15 feet, and that's the current height limit in the subdivision regulations. The net effect by the time they install it is the light will probably be around 16 feet to the top of the actual lamp. And so this is a common, a routine condition of approval that we deal with on these types of lamps. The reason we're kind of going in a little more detail here is because this is a village subdivision.
Well, the big question to me, what's the type of lighting in that open area like that? Is it strictly down lighting? Is it shielded down lighting? Trey?
No, sir. These are globe type street lamps. The catalog cut is provided by Riviera Utilities. Commissioners, there's a detail in it in your drawings. It would take a few minutes to find, but it is in the plans. It's the standard one you see in a lot of subdivisions.
It's a lamp. It's a lamp. It's not a vapor light. Is that what you're telling me? Or is it a vapor light that you can see from about 12 miles away?
It's an LED inside the globe. It is a globe type street light. But it's not a Cobra head, nothing like that.
You're right. It's something else we need to deal with down the road.
If that's the concern.
Well, at the time that we deal with it, we also, if we're a dark sky city, we probably want to, even those globe streetlights can be made with a cutoff on the top, so they still look traditional, but they're not beaming light up at the sky. Probably need to be consistent about that.
And like I said, commissioners, this is something we need to take up at a future amendment to the subdivision regulations,
Sure.
But also understand too that that in many of our developments are not supplied by Fairhope Utilities. So that'll be something we have to consider, is that these are fixtures provided and installed by either Riviera Utilities or Baldwin EMC. But
It's a big.
duly noted, we will take this up in the future.
Are there any other questions for staff? If not, then I believe the developer is here to speak.
I'm Trey Cordy with the Brandon's LLC. I just had one question for you, Buford, on this. You're saying that we cannot get a land disturbance permit until we get the permit for the 2 wetland crossings. The 2 wetland crossings, I'd like to ask that not be the case, because we could be sitting here 6 months from now. The 2 wetland crossings are just to cross a little narrow piece of wetlands within 2 lots. So if you look at lots 5 and 6, you'll see some wetlands crossing that. And if someone buys one of those, in order to get to the back part of the lot, we need a wetland crossing. We're doing it as developers just because an individual wouldn't know how to do it and be too expensive, so we're doing that. It has nothing to do, though, with the wetlands affecting the roads and construction. So we would like to get under construction with the roads and everything prior to getting those 2 wetland crossings approved. Because I don't know when the Corps of Engineers with COVID right now and stuff, it could be 6 months. I don't know when they're going to come out and approve it. So that's what I didn't realize that until.
Even without COVID.
Yeah, so I didn't realize that until Buford mentioned that. So that's the one thing I'd like to discuss with y'all, how to be able to.
And commissioners, if you want to wait and see if we have any other comments, but I absolutely understand Mr. Corey's concern right there, and I probably should have worded that a little bit better. So just give me a signal when you're ready to hear that.
Okay. Does anybody else have any, that makes sense to me. It's not a critical part of the whole development. It's just an amenity to those, and the actual crossings can't be built until they're approved by the Corps anyway. Are there any other questions or comments for Mr. Cordy? If not, we'll open the public hearing.
And Madam Chairwoman, if I can go ahead and answer Mr. Cordy's question if you'd like.
Sure.
So if you see on screen the way it's worded right there, no land disturbance activities for the wetland crossings shall commence until the design and so forth. Okay. Commissioners, writing 3 of these in the same day is a little bit challenging. So the intent was for that to be limited to the area of the wetland crossing, not to prevent land disturbance on the entire development.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for clarifying.
So it says for the wetland crossings, and perhaps it should have said for the wetland crossing area or areas. So that was not the intent.
No, that makes sense. Does that satisfy your concern? Okay.
So, just for clarification, we just want to add the word area.
I don't know if you need to really. If he does say for the wetland crossings. Okay.
And commissioners, that's fine with me. If that makes it clearer and gets us past this one, that sounds great to me.
It's a subset of item number 4, so it's clearly part of just item number 4.
And it's now part of the minutes and clarifications of the conversation. So
yeah,
it is recorded what our intent here is if you approve that language. Mr. Corey is okay with that.
Okay. So I guess we can open the public hearing. I'm not exactly sure how to do this on the.
Just ask if anyone.
If anybody wants to speak.
Okay.
Might remind folks you might have to unmute
okay.
each time you open this. If anyone wants to speak, give them a couple of minutes, 30 seconds or so.
Would anyone like to speak to this item? And remember, you have to unmute.
Madam Chair, I did not receive any comments
for
this case.
Okay. Can we close the public hearing? Is that enough time? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we'll turn it over to the council for commission, not council, for discussion or a motion.
Motion.
All right.
Ms. Chair, is it Ms. Chairwoman? Is that what it is? Madam Chairwoman?
Madam, yeah.
Okay. In response to SD 20.54, the estates at Verandas, I move that we approve subject staff recommendations.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes. Moving on, the next item on the agenda is ZC 20.10, the request of Gaver Village Partners, an amendment to the Clump PUD. So is,
I got this one.
okay, Hunter will do the staff
Joe, we got
presentation.
slides for this one. Thank you. We've seen this, the Clump PUD a few times and even in December. So the way I'm going to approach this is kind of what we saw in December when this was tabled and maybe some of the deficiencies and then how the applicant has addressed those. Just a second.
So Hunter, I pulled up the slides. I can unshare if you'd rather run it directly.
Yes, Buford, we had that one covered here. I think if you'll let us run with the slides, I can control them from here. Can you see those slides?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we're all familiar with the location here on 181 Fairhope Avenue, and in between Fairhope Avenue to the south and Gaver Extension to the north. This is approximately 76 acres. It is actually zoned. It is a PUD, existing PUD. The existing PUD, just for reference, was approved approximately a year ago that included R3 type lots to the west, R5 apartments in the central location, along with B2 around the perimeter along the highways and Fairhope Avenue and Gaver Extension. Just flipping through some of those, the unit counts, there was 3 units included within that, and the land use plan. So this is the proposed site plan as amended since December. And we still have 3 units. Unit 1 is business, B2 base zoning. Unit 2 is it's a similar site plan, but they're actually proposing this layout. And the density closely mimics R3 as opposed to R5, what was presented last month. Unit 3 is also R3 as opposed to R5. I'm going to flip through, we'll kind of see this plan again. We can always come back to anything if we need to clarify. So the units without the layout, this kind of shows the 3 units and the acreage split, where Unit 1, the business district, is 19 acres, 10, almost 11 for Unit 3. And Unit 3 is limited to convalescent nursing, assisted living type development. So they're proposing that limitation, even though it's kind of a R3, the use there will be limited to that. Where Unit 2 is, as proposed, triplexes and duplexes. The land uses, there's a lot of information on this table, and I'll split it up. So as you can see, the use here, that's the R3 is proposed for units 2 and 3, and B2 for Unit 1. And you'll see a little bit more notes here, a little bit more structure to the proposed plan.
I don't see a graphic up on the screen.
Yeah, nor do I. I was going to ask, are the guests not included in the slides?
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. We might need to back up a second, so let's get that fixed. Is it working, Joe, or Buford can share it if that's the easiest thing to do on Teams. There we go. Okay. How about now? Do you see a?
Yes.
Okay. Let me back up a few slides and you heard me. Let's just back up to here. This is what was referring to with the previously approved PUD. And I'll skip ahead to, how do I skip ahead now? There we go. So this is what is currently proposed. And there we go. You still got our screen sharing? This makes it a little easier. So if you can see the screen where Unit 3 here is the approximately 11 acres that is R3 but limited to assisted living, convalescent home. Unit 2 is the R3 triplexes, duplexes, and then around the perimeter of Fairhope Avenue and 181 primarily is the B2 Unit 1. I'm going to skip ahead back to where we were and catch up here because this is really where it gets into some of our challenges last month and with the revisions. Under the notes, there was a few notes there that gave some heartburn. The PUD did not propose the installation of sidewalks along State Highway 181. As you can see in the plans, when we can look at that, they have changed that. So there's a sidewalk along 181 with street trees. The two notes at the bottom were more administrative. They were added between Planning Commission and City Council. They've removed those notes. We believe Unit 2, although there was a site plan that showed approximately 232 units, it was proposing R5, which would allow 410, I think the number was. So we recommended that match R3, and they have done that both on Unit 2 and 3. A master drainage plan we requested, and it was a condition of approval that made it through both Planning Commission and City Council under the previously approved plan. And applicant has agreed to do that, and we're okay with this timing since this is a PUD. This kind of gives them the comfort level that this plan is okay, and when they come back for a subdivision of those units, they'll be ready to commit to that big plan because that's going to be expensive. So we're okay with that. We showed this graphic. We were a little concerned. The sidewalks not installed on 181 and internally to Unit 2. This is the plan, and there is a sidewalk shown along the perimeter of Gayfer Extension, Fairhope Avenue, and 181, as well as on both sides of the road in Unit 2. There's also some notes, if you'll, within this plan for Unit 3 example. There's no idea how that layout's going to be. There will be a mandatory site plan review, but there's the note there that there will be 3 points of connection to the existing sidewalks along the perimeter and internal. And there is also, one of the concerns was the buffer against the westernmost neighbor, and there was a 30-foot setback. Not much of a buffer or defined as what that is. This has been increased to 45 feet, the first 10 feet of which will meet the landscape ordinance that has some screening involved. And then there's also a sidewalk / trail that will be included within that buffer. So it's connecting Fairhope Avenue and Gayfer Extension. There was a sidewalk included on the front road. There were some challenges here timing-wise to get all this in, so and there's a little conflict of notes. I want to make sure, and the engineer's with us tonight, so we can talk to Scott, and I want to get your thoughts on this. One of my points of feedback was a sidewalk was important on that business side of the street, but since there's all these sidewalks internal to B2, we don't necessarily need one along the main road, and there's one on 181. But connecting all the B2 properties makes it a little more comprehensive, and it was drawn on the opposite side that I was thinking, so we can discuss that if we need to. Some of the other concerns.
Can you clarify that? I know I'm not.
Yeah, it's hard to do that. That's why I found myself pointing at the plan.
Are you saying you don't think we would need the perimeter sidewalks on?
No, so there are, where you see all of the buildings, that is Unit 2. And along the perimeter of that, before you hit the main roads, there is proposed public roads. So kind of where the little roundabout is and moving north and south of there, that will be, as proposed, will become a public road. And there's a sidewalk on the Unit 2 side of those, if you can see
Gotcha.
that graphic. And it may be the intent to provide one on the opposite side, but I think that's where it's more important there, to connect all of those B2 properties. And there is a note that says a sidewalk will be included on both sides of the road. So it's just a point of clarification that we can ask Scott about and get some
Okay.
thoughts from the Planning Commission as well.
Okay.
There was some concern on how these dimension requirements for units and lots didn't really tie things together. Within the notes, there's some attempts to create some cohesive character, even a nod to the architecture where the first unit coming in will I think it was between Unit 1 and 2, the first one will establish the architectural pattern and follow suit. There's also some setbacks on where the Unit 2 doesn't have internal setbacks because it's one 40-acre lot. So, but where those front the street, there's been some guidance there. There's also where to establish in B2, this parking is proposed on the side and rear. And we do handle another issue in the conditions of approval that I'll get to in just a second. Again, this was a buffer against that westernmost property. This was the previously proposed plan. As you can see, that was just a 30-foot setback separating, so it's a little more clear what's proposed. And here's kind of a detail. It's hard to show a graphic where you can read it, so that on the bottom of the page is kind of a blow up where you see there's a 5-foot minimum sidewalk located within that buffer. The westernmost 10 feet will meet our landscape ordinance. So those are proposed and meet the intent of what we were looking for. Most of these are memorializing some thoughts, but there's a couple I want to point out. On most of the roads within the landscape ordinance in Fairhope, we have a 20-foot landscape tree preservation buffer, whatever you want to call it. That is required on Gayfer Extension and Fairhope Avenue, but it's Highway 181 that wasn't included in the landscape ordinance or tree ordinance when it was created. So that makes the condition of approval that 20-foot space, and it occupies the same 20-foot setback. So it's not an additional 20 feet, it's just within that area. Each lot within Unit 1 through 3 will have mandatory site plan review. One of the only concerns we had was a little bit of squeezing where you get retention, detention is not included here. So that last note is Unit 2 is going to require 20% green space, and we want to make sure there's enough room there, so we don't want to eat up the green space as shown when it's time to come to stormwater. There's options, and they can be amenities. There's other things we can look at, and you know, but what we're saying is they must meet the subdivision regulations or is approved during that MOP or site plan review. So that is what we've looked at and are recommending approval based on those conditions. Be happy to answer any questions.
I've got a couple questions, Hunter. I'm trying to remember the discussion we had in December, but as it relates to the widening of 181, how does the B2 on the west side of 181 configure in with what we know is proposed widening of 181? Has that been taken into consideration?
If okay, I'm going to let Scott answer that one.
That'll be all right.
That's okay.
Okay, wait a minute.
Yep.
Now, next question. With the B2, all along 181, where do we have any fuzzy feeling that we're not going to have a McDonald's, a Burger King, a Dunkin' Donut, a used car lot, all lined up along 181 where we end up looking like everything that everybody's always said they don't want to look like?
Yep.
B2 allows you to pretty much do whatever.
That's correct. There are no limitations on the use of B2.
Right.
Where it's sited and the architectural details have been addressed, parking side and rear. You got a 20-foot.
Well, I understand about, all that, but McDonald's looks like a McDonald's and a Hardee's looks like a Hardee's and a.
Not necessarily. There's
when they're built in New Orleans or somewhere with the Historical Review Board, but I'll let you finish asking. I had those
when they built
questions.
down there at, in Daphne at the interstate, where you got a boat lot, you got a car lot, and you can't hide a car lot.
Right.
And a car lot is acceptable in a B2.
It is.
So anyway, my point, and I don't want to belabor it, but the point is, certainly in just my opinion, I don't want to see us turn 181 into what everybody has always raised so much cane about, the Greeno Road. And this is the next big road that we're going to face in terms of development, which we're already there. But a lot of it, we don't really have control over from the standpoint that a lot of it's outside city limits.
Yeah.
It's an unzoned area also.
Yeah, and
so there's got to be some way that we've got some semblance of control over that when we allow 14 lots or however many it is, the B2 facing Fairhope Avenue and 181.
And every one of them will come in as a site plan review, and potentially MOP if they have more than 2 units. I'm winging it here. You might want to limit, maybe, I don't think it would be fair to say no drive-throughs on any of those lots, but you might want to limit a drive-through to 3
I guess what I'm espousing a concern, but I'm at the same time, I'm asking you for some direction in terms of what might be available to us to prevent that type of development from occurring all up and down 181 into the future.
Yeah. Well, I think aesthetic is one of the most important parts. I do believe that it might be challenging to get some of those, and this is where we can ask Scott too, on some of the volume coming in and out of there from 181. Aldite might have a challenge on some of those, but you might be right in, right out.
And there was someone that wrote in, and went on, someone that wrote in what was the guy's name? Michael Warren. Had a good point about the right in, right outs, and the right in and right outs associated with Walmart.
Right.
They don't work.
Right.
I abuse them just like everybody else does, and I'm not going to point fingers, but I do. But especially that one that's closer into the intersection of 181 and Fairhope Avenue.
Right.
That's pretty close to that signal intersection.
And to address those things as a PUD, this is a little bit higher level where we're, if every lot was determined what it was going to be, we might push for a traffic study, but, that might talk about those things, but each one's going to have to be dealt with through a site plan review indivially, and it may be that the second or third.
If they build the roads and then.
Let me give you a good recent example. They built, of all things, they built a standard Whataburger out there by Lowe's. Okay? I was at Lowe's the other day, and I'm telling you, the traffic was backed up. Out of that drive-in, they had 2 lanes, out of that drive-in, came out of their parking lot, came into the Lowe's parking lot, went all the way out to Highway 90, and they were backed up. It was the most congested bunch of garbage I've ever seen in my life. And I guess my point is, everybody wants to go to Whataburger, I guess. I don't know what the point is. The point is, we've got the same situation, but I mean, we're at the beginning stages now, and now's the time to really consider that and to address it.
Yeah.
Well, but just to clarify, these will all be accessed off that public street. not off of 181? Is that?
To be determined. I mean,
Okay, so we
there's
don't know.
options.
Okay, so that we review that in the site plan review for each individual.
That's right.
Okay, I had made
That's
that
right.
assumption.
It's kind of, only thing that's covered here is kind of where it's fronting and what the aesthetic is from 181.
Yeah.
Is more
Well,
importantly, but,
The street trees and the sidewalks certainly help the aesthetic. Not having parking to the front will help the aesthetic. I had the same question as Art, like, what other tools do we have? Because even the language that the first development will determine the character of the rest of them, I don't know if that makes me feel better or not.
Yeah.
What if the first one is a out-of-the-box?
Well, like I know.
Franchise.
The studies that are done by fast food places and other chains are dictated by the amount of traffic. We have a lot of traffic right there right now. So the demand is going to be substantial, and power to the landowner. I mean, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great, but it's also, once it changes hands, it's going to be out of our hands, it's going to be out of the landowner's hands, it's going to be out of everybody's hands. And I think it's just a matter of, tell me what our options
Well, we
are.
heard drive-throughs
Yeah.
are something that we could contemplate limiting.
I mean,
Well, and then you've got a bank that has a drive-through, and you have a lot less traffic with the bank, at certain times of the day, but,
But
yeah,
a bank could be a B4
right.
instead of a B2. But a B4, but a bank could be built in a B2.
But that's what I'm saying, when we limit drive-throughs, I'd much rather see a bank. I mean, we have enough of them, but.
Not a few.
I agree. We don't need more.
How many more banks?
until there needs to be another branch.
We don't
out.
need any.
I mean, this is a PUD, so you can add conditions. If you want to limit that, make a drive-through, have to go through Board of Adjustment. Or maybe give them 1 or 2 drive-throughs, and any more have to go through a Board of Adjustment or come back for a PUD revision. I don't think it's feasible. There's other options that take more time. You can get into form-based codes that require that. I mean, that would be punishment. We're going to be 6 months before we can get it back in here and have a plan that would be permissible. But I like to say a PUD is a negotiation. There's no precedence created. Each one is unique. So if
And I'm going to just speak from firsthand experience. It goes back to the old adage, you don't do for one, you're not willing to do for all. So if we set a precedent, kind of in the first run, Walmart went over there because they were outside the city limits. The city didn't want them, so they said, okay, fine, we'll just move over here. And that's where Walmart is. But if you look right there at the intersection of 181 and Fairhope Avenue, what have you got? You got a car lot, you got a convenience store, you've got another corner that's available, you got this corner that's available, but when you're going up and down for 181, going north or going south from that main intersection, what are you going to tell the folks that own properties up and down there then? Oh, well, you can't have a B2 because we've already got some B2. Well, I can tell you, I heard that for 42 years.
Yeah.
And that dog doesn't hunt.
Well, and what I will say about that is there's an opportunity here for this B2 within a PUD to be constrained, if you choose to.
Okay, and I guess that's what I'm asking.
And
you is some
that
guidance.
makes it a different animal and unique,
That's
and
right.
not creating
I
a
agree.
precedent.
So give us some guidance.
What do you have heartburn with on the use table?
Just
Car
no consistency at all.
Okay. Exclude or limit the things if car lots is one?
Or storage yards even allowed in?
I'm sorry?
I didn't check that, or self-storage.
Yes. Self-storage is allowed.
I mean, but to me, my concern is uses like that are dominated by asphalt and vehicles and not people. And, I mean, they have to go somewhere, but.
Well, there certainly are a lot of buildings, as you mentioned, over in New Orleans, and there's even a Dollar General that's over off off of Highway 44, that, you know, is a neighborhood, they did it really nice. Well, I don't have a problem with the facility, it's the aesthetics associated with those types of developments. Or you get one that's an open car lot with cars everywhere, and then this one is made out of, you know, some ugly looking stucco that's yellow and green, and then the next one is bricks, and the next one is something else, and it just, you know, I mean, it's we're looking for the character. I don't want it I don't want it looking like, what is the development down on the coast?
Seaside or?
Seaside,
watercolor?
you know, I don't like
Well,
that.
I mean, I think we'd be hard pressed to come up with architectural design guidelines in this meeting.
And that's the challenge, and what I will kind of roll back to.
Or to get too specific. So, just to clarify, as long as we're on staff questions, that could be considered, I guess, as part of the site plan review. You know, when they say that the architectural character will be established with the first one, so will that be presented as part of the site plan review? I mean, can we make that a condition of approval, that it's presented,
Yeah.
That's a slippery slope.
And I think being that everyone comes back through that site plan review, and they even gave a little bit of flexibility here, the developer even recognized that, hey, the first one might be a miss. So, you know, there's some flexibility, but it is as approved by the Planning Commission and City Council. So, you know, this Planning Commission and future Planning Commissions kind of hold that authority to establish that and keep that. If Unit 2 is built first and establishes a pattern, then McDonald's or whatever it is wants to come with their golden art, you know, colors, and then hold them to, no, we've established this. I think that's in we're empowering the Planning Commission and the council to do that.
Here's the problem, Hunter. And it comes down to, I'll look at it now from our standpoint, city standpoint, from the developer standpoint, and from the landowner standpoint. They need to know what the expectations are. And there's no way a developer is going to be excited about doing a development if he doesn't know what the expectations are. And the more we can give them what the expectations are within limits of what they will be expected to do, the easier it's going to be for them. But once they know what the rules and the regulations are, then they can abide. They don't have, most of them don't ever have a problem abiding by those. It's when it's a variable or it's fluid and it changes and they don't have a clue what it is.
Well, and what I will tell you on this one, this is a PUD. So the developer, the applicant comes to us, it's up to us.
So, I mean, it seems like, I mean, when they have established the setbacks, the street trees and the sidewalks, that's starting to establish the aesthetic, you know, just with the structure. But it seems like we're down to the uses that we could restrict unless we are, I mean, that's what I'm hearing. Yeah. Without creating a form-based code for this.
Yeah, I think that gets out of.
B2 doesn't eliminate any uses for the most part.
Well, within a PUD, you can say B2 minus and go through the use table and say minus.
Well, I know, but right here tonight, we've not done that.
Well, but we could.
But you could.
We could.
Well, I know, but we're gonna sit here for an hour and a half and
I think we could run through B2 and tell you what we don't want there.
Yeah. I don't have a copy to run through that.
I think that'd be useful.
Yes, you do. It's in your packet.
Oh, okay. Oh, boy.
I do know that we need to.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Is that what we're getting ready to do here?
You're making a recommendation to city council on this one, by the way. So this will be city council's decision whether to.
But okay, let me just, devil's advocate now.
Okay.
We're gonna sit here and have a discussion with people that are on the telephone or on their computers that are part of this planning commission to make a recommendation to the city council, and we're gonna sit here right now and decide without any real ability to have a conversation, a meaningful conversation about items in the B2 classification that we don't want on a given piece of property or a given development?
What is, the other alternative is that we make a motion to approve or deny this? Or what, give me another alternative.
I would give you another one, and I know they're not gonna wanna hear this, but with this, and whether or not, and it's just my opinion now, y'all understand, it's not, y'all may have a completely different opinion, but I would give you the third option of approving it or disapproving it. The third option would be to table it and, or to table it and have that discussion before the next meeting and come up with the list.
Well,
but not where we're sitting here just saying, oh, well, I don't like Burger King and I don't like
Well, I agree that it needs to be more thoughtful, but discussion.
Hey, guys.
There we go. I was wanting to give, before we go through any of that, I'd like to give, and we can come back, and maybe open the public hearing, see what other
Yeah,
thoughts are
we're
out
just
there.
on staff discussion, we haven't noted.
And let Scott Hutchison with Goodwill Mills is on.
Okay. Okay.
Go ahead, Scott, you the man.
Y'all, can I talk, Gunner?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Can you speak
Y'all
up a
hear
little
me
bit?
okay?
Now we can.
We can now, yep.
Okay, sorry, I'm on my phone and my computer. The computer was not sounding too great, so I jumped on the phone. To start off with, no, we're not wishing to table this again. Again, remember, this is an existing PUD. Everything we've been talking about for the last many minutes is really the retail part out there on the highway, and we've tried to establish or put in your hands a great deal of control, because we're saying we're going to come back to you for each one of these site plans as we do them, and after doing this thing for well over a year, almost 2 years now, right here at the meeting at the last second to talk about developing a list of what's acceptable on these lots is, in my opinion, it's a little late and a little unreasonable at this point. I mean, we could have done this months and months and months ago, but we're still giving you a lot of control. And if we present a use that you would take off the list tonight, then you'll have every opportunity to not approve that when it comes back for site plan approval. So I really don't think we should get that bogged down into a list of what can and cannot be put on these lots. Just my opinion, and no, I don't wish for this thing to be tabled again while we come up with a list. I'll just tell you that.
Does anyone have any questions for the developer?
Can I point out, this is John, under the ordinance, B2 can have a restaurant, but it's on, or other things, it's only permitted only on appeal and subject to special conditions. I don't know exactly what that means, but that may cover it.
Well, but that has to do with a restaurant. How about a car lot?
Same thing.
Here's another option that, Scott, I don't know if this, how you feel about this. Right now, the B2 has to come back in for site plan review. We could make those B2 just come in and amend the PUD instead of site plan review. The challenge to the applicant is it takes a little bit longer because it has to go through council. When a site plan review has to come through council, planning commission, and then city council, but doesn't have a public hearing. A PUD amendment has to go twice because it has a public hearing. But where the site plan review, we really don't get into uses and don't have that.
That's the point.
Where with an amendment to the PUD, you have a little bit of authority to discuss those uses. And, you know, if it's the 8th drive-through there that's going to cause traffic problems, you have a little bit of a challenge. Time-wise, application-wise, Emily, what are we looking at? That does have a different fee.
Yeah. Yes, there is no fee with the site plan. It's a rezoning for a PUD amendment.
Advertisements hit the city, there's a cost to us.
A big cost.
Big cost.
Well, you know, and all I want to say, if this was probably anywhere else except for on the next major thoroughfare that we're going to be dealing with in this city, and this is the beginning and this sets the precedent, I probably wouldn't even be opening my mouth.
Well, and I'm going to throw one more thing out there, Art. I do want to say that this applicant has come within the city. This was an unzoned piece of property, could have built without any zoning. So they have become into the city, and that means something. It's different for each of us what that means, but to me, it means something that I think what they're proposing establishes some guidelines that is much better than dealing with an unzoned piece of property to establish those.
Well, it is, but not, and I'm not going to dredge up any old situations, but where Big Lots is in Fairhope at Fairhope Avenue and Greeno Road, that giant paved parking lot with that strip mall on it, that was in the city too. Once upon a time, before it was developed.
And if you look at this versus what was previously approved, there are not lots like that. We're also limiting, establishing the same limitations on 8,000 square feet. Nope, I'm sorry, we're not. But that is a business district is limited to 8,000 square foot buildings, single-use buildings.
I've had my say, so.
Okay.
I don't want to beat this horse if nobody else is.
Buford, let me ask you, Buford, let me ask Hunter, I guess, since you're here. Let me ask you a quick question on this for the site plan review. If they come back for site plan review, while you can't restrict uses, you can dictate, what it looks like. I mean, for example, drive-throughs, can you control and limit that as part of the site plan review?
It's a little gray, but you would have to almost have calls. So just to say no drive-through because we don't want to.
And I'm not saying we wouldn't want to have any drive-throughs,
right.
But I'm saying if you were having a proposed drive-through on every single one of the properties facing 181, you could cut that down and say, well, you're not able to have one at every single location because we feel that's going to create a traffic nuisance. But I mean, I'm not saying blanket across the board, but.
You're absolutely right there, and because these would be, it would be a domino effect. The first one would come in, probably not going to have any problems. But if the 8th lot comes in with another drive-through, and we're already having those queuing problems that Art was talking about with a Whataburger, I think that is then a valid reason to deny the next one because there is a problem. So it empowers the Planning Commission and the City Council, future ones, to make those logical decisions.
The problem there is it's subjective about which is the one that breaks the camel's back.
Yeah.
And that's subjective, and it opens us to not just criticism, but it opens us to legal action to boot, is the way I see it.
We have an attorney here, and I'm not one.
I know, and I'm watching him shake his head while I'm talking, too.
But to Jimmy's point, the site plan review, you would have the ability to evaluate the traffic and other issues as it was in that situation at that time and take that into account. So you would have some measures from an objective standpoint to evaluate the request and potentially disapprove of it.
I mean, and if I'm just thinking about this correctly, if they're not in here to tweak Unit 2, they're already approved for Unit 1.
Unit 1 is approved with additional acreage. So B2, there was a much larger lot there that would have probably been your bigger asphalt parking lot. These are reduced down, pushed. Our Unit 2 was smaller, but R5 apartment type proposal. I will say there are instruments of that kind of when we get in a mix, and And an MOP is very objective. There is some subjectivity in a site plan review. There are requirements to show elevations of buildings, and, it's not form-based codes where we're going to tell people what color their building is, but
But you look at
there
it.
is some objectivity or subjectivity within that, and by its very nature, and that's part of a little bit of a zoning code is versus a subdivision regulation. So, I don't think we will abuse that, but, if it is a problem, I think there's some ways to at least review those things and offer suggestions.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the developer? Oh, well, actually, I had a question on the timing of the sidewalks. That was something that staff had brought up in their review, and I didn't know if there was, what y'all's intent was in terms of when to put in the perimeter sidewalks.
There is a note on the plans, so the public street sidewalks we put there. I do want to give Scott a chance to answer our earlier conversation. Along those public streets, Scott, is there still a plan to put those on both sides, or, there's kind of a conflict between the plan and the note?
Okay.
Scott, you still with us?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The plan is to put sidewalks, along 181, which initially the current PUD is approved not putting sidewalks on 181. But with this revision, we are proposing to put them on 181. And then on the internal public road, we were proposing to put them along the duplex side of what we call Unit 2, on that side of the street. And the reason for that is just not to have a sidewalk crossing every driveway into the Unit 1 lots, where you could walk along the sidewalk and then cross to that Unit 2 or the Unit 1 lot as you desired, without having to just kind of reduces the pedestrian vehicle conflicts, and that. But I mean, we're not going down that mountain. If the desire is to move it up on the other side of the street, we will gladly do that. But with the addition of the sidewalks along 181, we still have them on both sides of the street as it's presented now. It's just they're moved to the 181 side of the lot versus the interior road side of the lot. Does that make sense, sir?
It does.
Okay.
It does. I disagree with one of the thoughts there is getting people safely across the internal sidewalks, because people coming and walking are gonna, yes, they will be crossing some driveways, but controlling where those people cross that public road as opposed to a driveway, I think, is more important. So being able to funnel those onto the sidewalk on the B2 side and tie those B2 lots together was my thought process. But
and that's something, Hunter, we could, we have to come. Our next step is to come back for a subdivision plat, and we could determine which side of the street then at that point. I mean, it really, I mean, there's arguments both ways.
Yeah, I may be just I thought I was seeing sidewalks crossing the internal streets. It seems like there's a couple of different things you'd want people who live in this residential area to be able to get out to sidewalks and maybe go into Fairhope, or, go way across. And then you also want those people to be able to go to these businesses, I assume.
I agree. I think the more sidewalks we have, the less car traffic we're going to have, and we're going to need the residents of the facility to be able to use the commercial aspect as well as get into town or Walmart or whatever, and whatever is going to be building down the road.
It seems like it would be best to have them on both sides of that internal street.
Well, this is what I'm envisioning, apartments that are in Spanish Fort with the Publix, And do any of those people walk to the Chick-fil-A, the Taco Bell, to all it is parking lot after parking lot. There's not any kind of walkability, and that's what I don't want to see.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's nice to have a safe way for people to actually walk to those businesses if they choose, or bike. As well as a safe way for them to cross the street and get onto the sidewalk and go
Yeah, I think
somewhere
that's
else.
going to be a challenge. We're crossing, I think there's some requirements on roundabouts that they can't be at the intersection like shown. So might have to come down.
Shift.
So just getting across the street and then connecting those businesses establishes on the front end. I think I said it, whether right or wrong, we have the.
Okay, well, I mean, we'll agree to move them to the other side of the street, Hunter, that's not a problem.
Okay. Well, and I think we and you have two opinions of the planning commission. It's up to them.
I'd like to, I hear him about the hazard crossing all the driveways, so I would tend to want to see them either on both sides of the street or have one, there's advantages to both sides. Have one way on the side that doesn't have all the driveways to get somebody out to the main sidewalk if they're trying to get out, and have another crossing that safely takes them to sidewalks connecting those businesses.
Okay, can we move that decision, like Scott proposed, to the next step would be coming and splitting up the units in a subdivision. We can look at that then as.
Sidewalks to be clarified with the subdivision request.
That okay?
That makes sense to me, if that makes sense to you guys. Okay, so we haven't even had a public hearing. Or if there are no more questions for Scott, we should open a public hearing. Or Scott, do you have anything else you'd like to contribute?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody in the public like to speak to this item? All right.
Thank y'all for allowing me to come and speak tonight. I have a few questions and then a few comments as well.
If you'll please
Oh,
state
sorry.
your-
Thank you, Hunter. I'm used to seeing this done. I've never actually had to do it. This is Jeremy Sasser, 438 Swain Willow Avenue. My first question is, I see Unit 3 is set aside as a convalescent nursing home type situation. Is this kind of going to be marketed as a retirement community, Hunter? Have we heard anything from the developer? The reason I ask is duplexes, triplexes, there aren't any in that general vicinity that I can think of. And I don't know that that fits with if it's a traditional duplex, triplex, I don't know that it fits with the character of the surrounding neighborhoods.
Scott, I don't know if you can hear me from this mic. There is a similar project, if you want to let them know. Old Battles Place, are you familiar with that section? And
I am.
Scott, am I wrong by saying it will be a similar type development?
No, you're not wrong. That's exactly what is proposed here, and it'll look very much like a single-family home subdivision. They just will be duplexes and triplexes, but it'll look just like Old Battles Place.
And no limitation to the Unit 2 on retirement, but the Unit
Well,
3. And we won't know what the.
Well, no, that's what made me, you're starting to see more of those come into the area where they're kind of building you live by yourself, and then in the same community, you can move over to the nursing home, assisted living home when that's what generated that question. This, I guess, would be a question for Scott. Scott, has AlDOT seen this plan to show 3 connections onto 181 along with the 4 connections onto public, City of Fairhope roads for a total of 7? Have they seen that, and especially the roundabout that close to 181?
Yes, they have.
We,
when we got, this is pretty much the same as the first PUD that was approved, and once we got that approved, we immediately had a meeting over there with them and got their blessing. We've not submitted any applications just because we have not designed it yet, but they were okay with it.
So no traffic impact study has been done in any way?
No, no.
And will that be a requirement from the city before any development is done at all?
That will be when we get to the subdivision regulations on that will be a trigger that. The MOP review that this Unit 2 would trigger would require a traffic study.
Okay. The 7 connections to that one piece of property seemed a little excessive, especially the 2 at the corner of Gayfern and the 2 at the corner of Fairhope Avenue. That's going to lend itself to a gas station, and that goes back to the conversation Mr. Dyche brought up and the uses. I don't want those corners, they already have a gas station there, and we don't want that corner to become what it could be if it got more gas stations on it, as well as it would look similar with the distances to the gas station there at the corner of Fairhope Avenue and County Road 13. And I remember there being a lot of, you put the traffic that's on 181, along with those people trying to get out onto Fairhope Avenue on 181, that is a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. And I think kind of at least limiting what the uses are on those corners, or putting some kind of no driveway, no drive-throughs. One option would be a no drive-through unless approved by the planning commission at site plan approval. I don't think you need to go to the BZA for that, but I don't think you need to give a blanket that you could have a drive-through on every one of these lots, because you could fit a lot of fast food restaurants on 181 right there. Because they're not being held to that lot layout, correct?
Yes, the lot layout the unit count would be, it could be that the interior lots on the Unit 1.
That's the one I'm talking about, yeah.
But your roads are established, there's some minor changes, but for the most part, that's where the lots are. 2 of those can be combined into one.
But they couldn't take one of the wide one on the north side of the main entrance, they couldn't take it into like 3 lots?
No, not without coming back for different provisions. So in the Unit 1, there are 13 B2 lots.
So it's not an acreage, but it does have 13 lots? Okay. All right, the traffic one was a big one, because that's going to generate a lot of traffic on Fairhope. I mean, Fairhope Avenue already gets backed up during peak hours anyway, and trying to dump that much traffic onto it's just going to make it worse.
Okay. And we haven't done a traffic study, but it's something we consider. And one of the things we did consider was the acreage that was provided in what's currently approved generates a lot more traffic, because there's how many more acres of commercial, Scott, B2? I think there's 18 acres, so 8 more acres, something along those lines. 28 versus 19.
Yeah,
28 versus 19. So
I actually wanted to come to those meetings, but my previous job wouldn't allow me to get here on the first Monday night of the month, and Scott knows why.
Oh, yeah.
And one other thing, and I've seen it in other areas, if the parking and such for those commercial units is going to have to be on the interior side, I think that's going to lend itself to maybe them trying to put their dumpsters on the 181 side?
No, not just the interior, it's front and side, so there's still opportunity to handle a lot of the
And we'll review, I mean, trash, and if you'll address questions to me, and that we're getting,
I'm sorry,
getting super casual, which is fine, but I'm just being aware of the
Yes, ma'am.
time. And that is something that gets addressed in the site plan review.
All right.
Dumpster screening and location and all of that. So we will
My apologies.
share your concerns, and we'll have an opportunity to address it.
Just the uses on the business side scares me as to what we don't want it to look like Hamburger Hill and Daphne. And we want to protect it as best we can. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Are there any other members of the public out there on electronic land who would like to speak to this? And remember to take yourself off of mute. Okay. Well, we've done a lot of discussing along the way, but I don't know if we're clear enough for a motion. So I will close the public hearing. Excuse me, if no one else wants to speak. And do we have comments. We haven't heard much from the commissioners online. And I'm interested to hear if your thoughts to shape this motion. I do appreciate that the developer has responded to the concerns that we've brought up previously, and they've increased the buffer. They're doing, with the setbacks, the sidewalks, I think they're doing some good things. I'm going to summarize some of the things we've talked about. It seems that if we approve the final sidewalk design with the subdivision request, that seems like it makes sense instead of hammering it out right now with the concerns that we want to make those businesses accessible to the people in the development. Sort of lingering concerns that perhaps could be addressed in the upcoming site plan reviews are the character and the uses. Anybody else like to speak to that, or does someone have a motion that captures all of those things?
And one thing is you can make the motion, just ask staff and developer to talk about that in between now and city council and see if there's anything we might do to help alleviate some of those concerns.
Okay.
I'm not
with the character and the uses.
I doubt they want 13 drive-throughs as well, so maybe there's some limitation that can be. So if you'll just ask us to study that, we might come up with something.
The other thing that was noted in the staff comments that perhaps we could look at the timing of the sidewalks, and especially along that perimeter, maybe those being front-loaded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a note in there that the sidewalks along that internally public road will be installed at time when the roads are done.
Yeah, go out here, close that door.
Timing on the perimeter, Fairhope Avenue 181, I think that can be addressed, and when y'all would like to see those, and maybe Scott knows what they're proposing.
Get out of here.
Meetings in the time of COVID. I believe I asked that. Can we go back to Scott at this point?
Yeah.
Scott, what is the plan for timing of the installation of the perimeter sidewalks?
I'm here. We really hadn't set a time. We can agree upon something when we do the subdivision. Obviously, if the desire is to put them up front when we build everything else, that's fine. You may not put them in as the commercial lots are developed, right?
Correct.
No, we would do it at the time we install the public streets.
Okay. So thank you.
Okay.
Do we have a motion from the commission?
We might. What changes have we made to the recommendations?
I've heard that we want to recommend that the developer and staff work on the concerns about uses and character between
The commercial aspect.
in B2, and what's required in B2 between now and the city council meeting, and that we request that the sidewalks along the perimeter be installed at the same time as the public streets.
Yeah, and I just have a concern about without some parameters with staff in the meeting with the developer. I mean, your ability here is to recommend approval of the application, recommend approval with the application conditioned on specific revisions, recommend denial of the application, or alternatively continue discussion for further study. And so at the last meeting, it was tabled at the request of developer, so I do believe you have the opportunity to table it again. But I do have some concerns about making a recommendation without knowing what you're recommending.
Without being clear about.
Without being clear to the council.
Yeah. Yeah, and I believe the concerns are fuzzy enough that we need some more time to have a clear recommendation if it's about character and the amount of paving and vehicular use.
I'm just waiting to see if these people are saying anything. I keep thinking someone's saying something, but they're just breathing.
So we have to either make a motion to approve with conditions or move to table or deny. I don't hear that being expressed, though.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented by the planning commissioner, or by the planners.
Is that with the 5 conditions plus the front-loaded sidewalks?
Yes.
And this is a motion to recommend to the city council.
Correct.
Correct, yes. Not to approve, but to recommend.
Is there any discussion? Oh, we need a second.
This is the final part of it. I mean, I've been sitting listening for an hour.
That wasn't a second, I take it.
Did you get a second?
We haven't gotten a second.
I'm just trying to move along.
I'll second it. I'll second it.
All right. Do we have any comment?
Approved with conditions.
With the 5
from
conditions?
Yes.
And plus the sidewalk.
6 conditions to front load the sidewalk.
I feel pretty comfortable that we have the site plan review as a backup.
I personally do, but I also understand the concerns that people are bringing up, so everyone certainly vote your conscience.
All right, well, let's put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I mean, we could have gone through the list, but we didn't.
We need some more coffee for that list and the work session.
Did Harry and the others vote? I didn't hear or see any response. I'd like to do a roll call just for clarity, please.
See Harry.
Let's do that. Okay, well, roll call. Art?
Yes.
So we're just saying okay, Rebecca, yes. Harry?
Yes.
Okay, aye. John?
Because he's muted.
John, you're muted.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Clarice is not here. Holly is
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Okay. Lee's not here. Jimmy?
Yes.
All right. Motion passes.
Thank you, guys, and thank you for not going through that list.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Okay. Moving on. The next item on the agenda is SD 2102, the 9650 Dove Run LLC. Preliminary approval of Dove Run East 22-unit multiple occupancy project. Do I need to read the whole thing?
I'll take over from there, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, thank you very much. So this multiple occupancy project, you should have maps on screen. This is on Highway 98. This is on the eastern portion of 98. This is just east of the intersection of County 98, County Road 11 in US 98. Multiple occupancy project, and Commissioners, I'm going to try it. If you can see my pointer, just to lay this out for you. This is Dove Run West, as it is called. It is in place right now. Dove Run East will be right here, if you can see my pointer. Now, it's not reflected in the county maps just yet, but we have signed a replat request that will take this small rectangle and actually replat it to create a lot for PPIN 31753 will become Dove Run East, and then the balance of it, this lot number here, or this pin right here will be Dove Run West. They're common ownership by the same developer. You see the developer information there on the bottom of the screen. Also, Mr. David Schumer is the engineer of record, and he's with us here tonight. And Commissioners, we received a ton of feedback on this development from citizens. I'll say it a couple times. This is located in unzoned Baldwin County where we don't have use authorization. So just keep that in mind. Commissioners, the basic background information. A couple important things here that I'll go through. This is a 22-unit multiple occupancy project. Those 22 units will be mobile home spaces on 9.12 acres. You see the density right there. The green space, there's an issue with green space we'll get to momentarily, but from a quantity standpoint, it's satisfactory. As we said, it's unzoned Baldwin County. This is in the planning jurisdiction and the police jurisdiction. It is outside the permit jurisdiction. And as we said, the green space is adequate. We do have an issue we'll get to in just a moment. You see the engineer and surveyor right there on screen. This is not a traditional survey plat because it's an MOP case. However, we were supplied with a boundary survey, and so we used that to point out the green space areas, and so they complied with the 15% green space. Also, Commissioners, I'll point out the Baldwin County Health Department has signed off, and they signed this boundary survey much like you would sign a plat, because each space is proposed for a septic system or an on-site sewer treatment system. We asked the engineer to provide us a little additional narrative on drainage, because the drainage system on this project is in compliance with the subdivision regulations, but it does not connect to a public stormwater conveyance system. So the engineer provided us some additional narrative explaining how he complies with the subdivision regulations in terms of the 10% rule and downstream adverse effects. And this graphic is supporting that, and we can get into that kind of detail if there's questions. Commissioners, there are several assumptions on this project, which is very similar to how we handled the village subdivision that we saw earlier, which is sometimes is necessary on MOPs because they're not a traditional subdivision. We are going through a recommendation for preliminary approval, so they will come back for a final approval similar to a traditional subdivision because there is infrastructure that have to be dedicated to the city. So we'll just go through this very, very briefly. We were concerned about the turning motions onto US Highway 98. The engineer provided us information basically saying this has ALDOT's approval, so therefore that is one of the assumptions. The on-site septic systems, basically, and I want to thank Jason Langley for helping me review that. Essentially, you have two issues. Dove Run West, that's in the existence right now, is already on a septic system. So basically, we're deferring the approval of the septic system to the Baldwin County Health Department. If this was a traditional subdivision, we wouldn't be recommending approval due to the lot sizes, but these are not lots of record, these are spaces. So we wanted to make certain the Planning Commission knew that the large number of septic tanks had been vetted and reviewed by staff. And then the comments we mentioned earlier about the drainage system, we noted that. Also, the sign ordinance does apply here because this is in the police jurisdiction. And some other more routine assumptions here, not requiring action by, not necessarily requiring action by the Planning Commission, just memorializing these. So that way it's part of the approval about the tree ordinance, etc. The road they will build is not going to be dedicated to the city or the county, so it's not completely built to a public standard. And then just to address something, as I mentioned earlier, we had a number of comments from citizens about this development, and a lot of those comments were about use issues. So we just wanted to put in one of the assumptions and memorialize again that we're reviewing this development based upon the subdivision regulations as applicable to an MOP, and that use is not an area that we have the authority to regulate as far as the use of the property for mobile home purposes. So the recommendation is preliminary approval. We do have some conditions, Commissioners. First of all is that the green space quantity was adequate, but because they wish to use a playground, we did not receive any cut sheets or any drawings of any of those pieces of equipment that would go into that area, and we've required it of other developments. So we wanted to put this condition of approval if the Planning Commission is acceptable to approving it without those types of cut sheets and those drawings for the Planning Commission's approval. We wanted to moralize that and basically let the Planning Commission make that decision. Secondly, the developer is asking for a waiver from street lighting, which is not removed from the MOP process. Staff does not support that recommendation for waiver. Third is another waiver from internal sidewalks. Staff does not support that waiver as well for the reasons stated on screen and in the staff report. And then, Commissioners, items 4, 5, and 6 are basically some routine drawing revisions that are not out of the ordinary for a condition of approval because of the nature of simply reviewing drawings. So, Commissioners, I'm happy to answer questions on behalf of staff. Also, as I said earlier, Mr. Schumer is with us here tonight.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Buford?
This is Harry Kohler. Fire protection considerations are not a part of this approval.
And Commissioner, we didn't mention it, but we reviewed that, and again, I have to thank Jason Langley for assisting. They are adding 3 fire hydrants to this. So the fire hydrants are shown for installation, are in the plan. So yes, sir, that has been reviewed.
Yeah, they're on the drawings.
Great.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, Buford, this is Emily. I would just like to say, number 4, under your conditions, you have that the drawing should be added and revised prior to land disturbance. It is not within our permit jurisdiction.
That's understandable, and Emily, thank you for that comment. That's correct. It's not in our permit jurisdiction. We don't get another shot at this. So this is our only opportunity to really put any type of requirement on that, unless the Planning Commission wants to table it and unless the Planning Commission wants to go ahead and table it and require those revisions be performed before we bring it back before the Planning Commission.
Well, that is a question, because there's a lot of conditions of approval, and I don't understand why we would grant all these special conditions if other people are required to have, show the amenities in their playgrounds in the green space and have adequate tree protection plans. I don't know why we don't require that from these folks as well.
So, Commissioners, certain things, it's invariable through the drawing revision process that after something has been reviewed and revised a couple times, if something is of a routine and minor nature, and so oftentimes the revision gets made, but there's an additional. So, for example, the tree protection details were added to the drawings requested by staff, but the revision was not in full compliance with the tree ordinance.
Well, I guess, my question, though, Buford, is, isn't it the way you decide which tree is protected is based on the diameter or breast height? So if it doesn't give us the diameter or breast height, how do we know which ones are to be protected?
Because it appears that everything they've listed on their drawings is 20 inches or greater. But understand, Commissioners, certainly I, as a staff member, do not object if it's the desire of the Planning Commission to table this item.
I had one other thing I wanted to ask you to clarify, and regarding the sewer, if the county approves it and the Fairhope Public Utilities, no, that's not what it says. Okay, I was thinking both the city and the county had to approve it. No, just the county, and they have approved it. Okay, so there's not much we can do about that. Darn. Any other step? Anyone have any more questions for Buford, or should we let the developer turn over to the developer? Okay. Mr. Schumer?
Yes.
Would you like to speak? Yes.
Good.
Yeah, no, the detail that I use typically for tree protection allows like construction fencing and stuff like that when the city's detail requires a chain link fence. So that's the main difference in that note or criteria. And the city uses a 20-foot standard when mine has a 1.5 times the diameter. All of those trees are pecan trees. They're all above 20 inches. None of them are proposed to be removed. I think one of them was damaged during Sally.
Okay.
Since we started this, that may end up dying, but I can go back out there and check that one, or an arborist can go and take a look and see whether it can be saved or not. Beyond the other conditions, the sidewalk waiver, the lighting waiver, there is some lighting out there, but it's just utility pole cantilever lighting. We can let that remain if that meets the city's requirements. I'm pretty sure it probably is not a standard. It was just up there. And the sidewalks this is just a low volume, low density street. I mean, it's higher density, but with 22 units, I imagine the street could be used for riding bikes or walking up up to the 98 to hit the trail. And so that was the reason for that waiver. It's just such a low volume street. I know my kids play in the street more than they do on the sidewalks. And so it's just due to the low volume of traffic. It's a dead end cul-de-sac. There's not going to be that much, traffic going up and down that would disrupt the lighting. But I'm willing to follow any, decision from the planning commission. One thing that I did want to ask is how, we have our green space. I don't know if Buford can go back to the layout that shows the whole plan. But we have a retention area that is, about the equivalent size of, this plan is turned sideways on the left, the southern green space area. And the only real amenities that we were proposing, because the one on the north side is going to be have a little garden, like a community garden, because there's a lot of existing trees, the pecan trees in that area, that it's going to be hard to put like a true playground environment. So we could kind of cut out some areas in the middle for a community garden, and there's not really much of a cut sheet for a community garden. And then we were going to propose to put some picnic benches and stuff like that for people to sit and rest and gather. And I meant to submit a copy of a picnic bench with the last submittal, and it was still sitting on my desk. And on the other side it's just going to be a big field. My kids would rather play on a big field than playground equipment. And playground equipment brings liabilities and all kinds of other stuff that the developer is not going to want to, take on if someone were to get hurt on a swing set or something like that in our litigious world that we live in. But an open field can be used for, remote control cars, playing football, baseball, flying kites, and I was hoping to not put landscaping between the pond and that southern green space area, because it's going to be a dry retention pond with a pretty shallow slope, like a 5 or a 6 to 1 slope between the two. And so the retention area could kind of be used, it should not hold with the perk levels in this area. It should not hold water. And we anticipate very little discharge overall because of the perk rate, which allows for the higher density septic system. And so I don't know if I addressed all of Buford's notes to the satisfactory of any commissioners, if anybody has any questions.
Well, so because I think it wasn't just cut sheets, it was really a request for drawings or a way to clarify the intent for the green space. So I'm hearing that the one closest to the drainage, to the stormwater pond would be an open field, and that the one closer to 98 might have a community garden in it?
Yes.
Picnic bench.
Picnic bench.
And I think I listed that in either the narrative or maybe somewhere with picnic benches proposed as the, like an amenity. And I can provide some cut sheets for the picnic benches if it's needed. But that's where, parents, would go and sit and watch or gather for rest or put their food or drinks down or, materials if they're gardening.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they would get heavily utilized.
Any other questions?
Well, the only thing that I would say about green space or green space and that would be available for kids to play in, and certainly having been a kid, I think, once upon a time, I loved open areas where you could play football and baseball and basketball and do whatever else, but you got to understand, too, there are kids that are much smaller than that would love to have a swing set and some other amenities that the parents could take them or their siblings could take them to. So anything that would accommodate that, I think would also be helpful. That's my opinion.
Any other questions for the developer?
Nope.
No. Should we open the public hearing? Is there anyone has anyone signed up?
Can I make one more comment before the public hearing?
Yeah.
Just in case there are a lot of people that sent these letters in on there.
Gotcha.
This is really important to understand. This is an unzoned area of Baldwin County, not just out of the city limits of the city of Fairhope. It's not in the city limits of Fairhope. It's in the part of the jurisdiction of the city of Fairhope. But it is an unzoned district of Baldwin County. Zoning has been available in Baldwin County since 1981. That is an extremely long period of time. At one point, the Marlow area attempted zoning and it was rejected. So, without a zoning is a process by which you can set a map that indicates to you what will be built or what can be built adjoining your property. If you decide that you want to live in a unzoned district, there's nothing whatsoever that will protect you from anything that is built next to you. Be it a trailer park, which I read all of the notes that were attached to this application, whether it be a trailer park, whether it be a junkyard, whether it be a sawmill or anything else, there is nothing that will protect you. So you residents that are next to it in what I guess is called Key Allegro subdivision, I might suggest to you that you get your neighbors together and go to the county and ask them for a vote on enacting zoning in this particular area. Now, there has been a recent one there where there has been a vote, and that is now in District 19, as I'm sure all of you are now familiar. That's the first one in probably 10 years. So maybe there's some movement, but this is District 14, and it is unzoned, and you have no protection. So it's up to you. That's my spiel.
Okay, and I appreciate that our hands are tied to some extent with the concerns that were raised.
Dictate anything on that.
So
neither can the county.
Yeah. With that said, is there anyone from the public, either here in person or on the call, who would wish to speak to this? I'm surprised after all the letters.
Maybe tell them to unmute.
Be sure to unmute your microphone if you are trying to speak. Okay. We'll close the public hearing if there's no one to speak to this, and bring it back to the commission for discussion and/or a motion.
Motion. Second. Case SD 21.02 Dove Run East. I move that we approve subject staff recommendations. Wait.
What, you got something?
With all of them.
Yeah, if you would, it is the pleasure to approve. We would like to add a condition.
Okay.
It's a simple one. The engineer of records certification of
Is this
insurance
approval or
expired.
preliminary approval you're talking about, Art?
What was that?
The recommendation is preliminary approval, not full approval.
I don't think I said full approval.
Well, you just said approval, which doesn't have a qualification.
I know, but this is, the application is for preliminary plat approval.
Okay.
Simple one, just a condition of approval that certificate of insurance is updated. The date shown is expired. So, thank you.
What's expired?
The insurance.
Certificate of insurance for the.
Okay. Okay, so that's included in my motion.
It was effective date of last year, so just to make sure that the up-to-date one is included as part of a condition.
All right. And with that motion to approve, there were a couple of waivers, and I don't support any of them.
So 1 through 7, which include, we do not support the waiver for the sidewalks or the lighting.
Sidewalks, the
Lighting waiver.
playground equipment and street lights, I think were the three.
So that's just taking all those 6 conditions of approval
That's
as
right.
face value and adding
right.
the certificate of,
Number 7 would be the insurance certificate.
okay.
Did you get that, Emily?
I did.
You the woman.
And so, Commissioners, if I can interject very briefly, is the Planning Commission accepting the waiver from sidewalks and lighting?
No.
Or is it non-acceptance of the
We are
waiver,
the-
which means that?
No, we are-
Supporting the waivers.
We
Agreeing
are
with you.
taking your conditions of approval at face value as written and adding
Okay.
one more.
Okay, and Commissioners, thank you. So here's the effect. The effect of that is that this is a preliminary approval. They will have to come back for final approval because you have infrastructure that will have to be dedicated to the city of Fairhope. So it may be prudent just to underscore that the street lighting and sidewalks will be installed prior to application for final approval. And I think we probably need to add that as a condition of approval that clarifies all of that.
Is that implicit?
I think that's stated by denying the waiver.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, for the developer's sake, what we're looking for with the green space amenities is it doesn't have to be a cut sheet. In fact, a drawing is better than a cut sheet. Some description of the character of the green space that is welcoming and usable for the residents.
All the green space doesn't have to be full of playground equipment.
Yeah.
It just needs to be something set up, to me, something set over on the side for younger kids, whether it be a merry-go-round or a swing set.
It doesn't have to be expensive either. It just needs to be thoughtfully designed.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. Do we have?
So
we never seconded our motion, but
Nobody seconded it yet.
I thought
it just
Jimmy
be.
I don't think I did.
Jimmy did.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think I may have seconded it before you finished fully
Can-
stating it.
Excuse me, can you guys hear us?
We can hear you.
Okay, good. We've been trying to make a comment here. I have a neighbor with me. There's,
Hold on one second. I think we need to.
I understand.
Excuse me.
I understand
Excuse
the
me.
zoning stuff.
Ms.
And we're
Young?
going to jump on that as soon as we can figure out how to do it.
Can you, I'm sorry, can you hold on one second? I think we have to reopen, just procedurally, we need to reopen the public hearing. We were wondering why nobody spoke up. Okay,
Yeah, we
so,
couldn't get it unmuted.
okay, well, we understand, it's a learning curve. So we'll reopen the public hearing.
Please state your name and address.
Yes, my name is Gloria Young, and I live at 9797 Larryville Drive. I'm on the south side, I guess it was the northeast corner of our lot is adjacent to the proposed expansion of Dove Run. And I sent a letter in yesterday. I'm sure that was one of those that he was quoting from. What they're talking about, putting in a green space, playground, that all sounds great. But if you guys would just take a minute and drive down through the existing Dove Run property, I can assure you that the expansion is going to look exactly the way this one does now. dirt roads, no streetlights that I could see. There are no playgrounds. There's no underpinning, there's garbage, there's trash. Just vehicles. We would appreciate it greatly if someone would just ride down through there and look at it before you make any decision on this. And I know that we are in an unzoned area, but like I said, if anything at all, when the developer does, if he gets approval to do this property, we would really appreciate a full 6-foot privacy fence on the east, south, and west sides of this property. We've had problems with people coming onto our property and their dogs. And, we don't know if these dogs have been treated for rabies and if our animals are at risk of getting hurt, because they don't wear tags. And it's just been a problem. It's been a real problem. We've had folks camping out in our backyard, our wooded area to the back of our house. They've had drug paraphernalia out there. I mean, we've had the police out. We've had the police out here before. So I know it all sounds great and wonderful, but I don't think, what the developer's plan is in his mind's eye sounds great if it would be like that. But based on the experience that we've seen with the existing property, I don't see that happening.
Well, thank you. I think
Yes.
we heard, excuse me?
My name is Wayne Grover. I live at 9807 Larryville. I live next door to the Youngs. I've lived here for 15 years. I've had to chase people out of the Youngs property before they bought it, when they were back there smoking pot and carrying on in the back part of that property. I've also had to chase people off of my property, crossing my property to go into the Dove area. I understand that there's zoning, I understand that. But I protect my property, I put fencing around my property. I think this Dove Run person should put a privacy fence all the way around his property to protect his neighbors. And that's for the protection of the little kids that's going to live there, because there is no right for them to be crossing into the wooded area. There's no right for them to be crossing into Mr. Keller's field, which is behind my property.
Yeah, he's talking about that open field there where they can play football and everything. That's private property.
No, I think we were talking about the green space on the property. So we're hearing, we're hearing the concerns that were stated in the letter with the addition of the privacy fence.
Yes. That was me.
Okay. Is there anybody else from the public that would wish to speak while we've reopened?
We appreciate your consideration.
Well, thank you. We hear your concerns. We struggle with a multiple occupancy permit. There's very little we can do to address those, unfortunately. I will say that the conditions we just discussed attached to this motion were for streetlights and sidewalks, with the intent that is within our power to require, and perhaps that might help make it a little safer, be a deterrent to crime. We're trying to reach for any tool we've got.
There's no,
And I was going to ask about the privacy fence. Let me close the public hearing. Thank you very much.
There is no way to impose a privacy fence within the subdivision regulations.
No.
That's the kind of things you can handle with the zoning code, whether that's the city of Fairhope or Baldwin counties. We can, adjacent property where you have a denser property next to residential.
Buffers.
Residential. We can require those things, but the risk of not having zoning is you can't implement those. We can ask the developer if he would like to do that, and that's about all we can do.
And that's on the existing side, that's not even before us.
Right. I mean, this is Chris has a great point. This is a phase two, where they're talking about a fence.
Yeah, so that
An existing property, and that's just not something the planning commission has the authority to do. I mean,
So, but we could request with this phase.
You can mention it, but
You can't require it. You can request it, but you can't require it.
Yeah.
Right.
I understand.
And it's on the
people that
opposite
are-
side of where these residents that are complaining reside. It's on the east side, the new version is. That's before you.
Yeah.
How long would it take them to try to get rezoning?
A while. They've got to have well, you don't want to go through all the process associated with it, but it takes an application, request of the probate judge to enact you got to have a certain number of signatures, then you got to have a vote, then you got to have a zoning map developed, which is the people that are appointed within that community. And it's a pretty good process, but it's well worth it because of this. And you cannot preclude any type of development adjoining your lot with a trailer on it or a house with a $500,000 lot on it.
Well,
For what goes on next
It
to
does
it.
take leaders to do that within that community. That's not something the city of Fairhope can impose, but it takes leaders within that community to lead that charge. So, and typically what we see is once something happens that neighbors don't like, it goes away and that fire is gone to not be motivated to do that. But that's where I think we're missing the motivation within the community there.
The motivation to eliminate there was a big charge for district zoning in Baldwin County for an extended period of time until there was a group of county commissioners that came in, call it what it is, that were adamantly opposed to zoning within this county. And they quashed, contrary to what they would tell the public outright, they would go around and they quashed any future zoning. So there were a couple of zoning attempts that failed.
Yeah.
And there's not been one until District 19, which was voted on last week. There's not been one in years. Well,
say
now we've got a
some time
different
has
set of
passed.
county commissioners, and it may be time and appropriate to begin that again. But like you said, like Hunter said, it's going to take some people within the community. It's not the city of Fairhope's responsibility. Theoretically, it is the county's. The county should be an advocate for it.
Sure.
But it's about the community.
Yeah. And that's exactly what happened in the one that was voted on last week. It took some leaders within that community. So.
That's it.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, we have a motion that's been seconded. We've closed the public hearing, so I think we can
Do we need to
Just
restate it?
for
start
clarity,
over?
would you either start over and remove the pending motion, or have the person that made the motion restate the motion and
Art
get in a
would have to
second?
remove it and restate it.
Okay.
To do what?
Restate your motion.
Could you restate?
Restate it. Just restate your motion.
Didn't you write it down?
I'd be happy to restate it.
You restate it. I can't remember my name from
Art Dice
yesterday.
made a motion to approve the staff recommendation without the waiver to streetlights or sidewalks, and to include playground equipment, and to add a number 7, which is an updated certificate of insurance for the engineer.
Do you affirm your motion?
I affirmed it.
Second.
Oh,
I think.
Mr. Conyers had already.
Jimmy seconded it,
Oh.
right?
Okay.
I did, and I still second it.
Okay.
All right.
It's been seconded and thirded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes. Okay, so next item on the agenda is SD 2104, the public hearing to consider the request of Riverwood Estates for final plat approval of River Place, a 23-lot subdivision. We have staff to speak to this issue. Is it Buford? Buford, could you walk us through it?
You're muted, dude.
Earth to Buford.
Buford,
Buford went to get a McDonald's
you're muted.
out off of State Highway.
Okay, can everyone hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, bear with me just a moment. It's 7:15. Bear with me just a moment while I pull up a new set of slides. Okay, Commissioners, good evening again. This should be a routine final plat approval. River Place, this is located on River Park Road, County Road 33, just south of County Road 32, unzoned Baldwin County. Mr. Chris Lieb is on board with us. He is on behalf of the engineer of record, Mr. Austin, as you see at the bottom of your screen. This is a 23-lot major subdivision. You notice the acreage and density, the green space is satisfactory. This is unzoned Baldwin County District 14. This is only within the planning jurisdiction. It's outside police and permit jurisdiction. As we said, Mr. Lieb is with us tonight on behalf of the engineer of record, and you see the surveyor of record right there. Commissioners, here is the layout. You see the 23 lots up for approval tonight, and then you see there is an area of future development. This would actually be on the west side of the property, as you see on your drawing. Commissioners, you've seen this before when we have a final plat approval request. I will not read this, but as you've noticed, because each final plat is a little different, depending upon whether it's in the city, whether it's in the county, and also depending upon what is and is not dedicated to the city, we put this list of detailed follow-up activities by staff and the applicant, so that way they have a step-by-step process on what they have to do once they gain approval from the Planning Commission and once they go and record their plats. There's quite a number of activities, so we just simply list that here. We do have a couple of assumptions because some of the setbacks are in excess of county requirements, so this assumes that this has county approval, and these roads are not to be dedicated to the city of Fairhope. So we have an assumption right there memorializing that issue. If there's any revisions that need to be made to the as-built drawings, that'll be done to the county's satisfaction. So our condition of approval is, one, memorialize the follow-up activities, as we mentioned earlier. At the time we wrote the staff report, the fire hydrant and the service for lot 23, which fronts upon County Road 33, was not installed. So a routine condition of approval that they install that to the satisfaction of the water and sewer superintendent before we sign the plat. We do not, at the time we had to write the staff report, we didn't have the video inspection of the stormwater, which is not dedicated to the city but is required by the subdivision regulations, so we simply need that for file purposes. And then getting into the weeds a bit, Commissioners, I'm verbalizing number 4. There was a problem with one of the GIS shape files, so we're asking for that. That's something we didn't discover until today. We're asking for a new copy of that GIS shape file and its supporting files. So a little bit in the weeds right there, but we need to make certain we have all of that before we sign the plats. Otherwise, Commissioners, this is a routine final plat approval. Happy to answer questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Buford? Okay, do we have anyone from, is the developer here to speak to this?
This is Chris Lieb. I'm here. Buford did a good job of explaining what's going on. I'll answer any questions and pick them up.
Do we have any questions for Chris?
Nope.
All right, well then we'll open it for a public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak to this or has concerns? Somebody looks like they're trying to speak.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I live, my name's Helen Horton, 16720 River Park Road, right opposite the subdivision. Are they going to put at the intersection of 32, 33, are they going to put a four-way stop or a traffic light?
what, do you, let's go through all your questions and then we'll respond, but,
Yeah,
No,
okay, but
that's-
all
that's
those, you
outside.
know, the 24 houses that's gonna go there, and, all I see now are the street lights that's glaring in my windows. That's not include, I mean, the houses aren't even up yet, so I'm gonna have to, redo all my curtains and stuff, because that's all you see, shining through, my house. Other street lights. And then I've heard that there's gonna be, are they gonna have gas?
okay, can you, let's go through all your questions and we'll have staff address them. Have gas.
Street lights.
Okay, street lights and the utilities?
Gas.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you very much. Staff, can you speak to that?
I'm sorry, can you restate your address, please?
Yes, 16720 River Park Road.
Thank you.
So Commissioners, I'll take a stab at this, and Chris, I'll ask you to back me up. So Commissioners, obviously, this is a final plat. All the road is built, the infrastructure's put in place, obviously the street lights are burning. So if the traffic impact study required any improvements to the intersection of County Road 32 and 33, that would have been included in that traffic impact study. Now, that's been over a year ago, but if memory serves correct, and Chris can correct me, I don't think the level of service and the trip generation of this development generated anything that rose to the level that would have caused any intersection improvements at County Road 32 and 33. As far as the street lights, that is a standard requirement of the subdivision regulations. And so therefore, if they're not installed, they're not in compliance with the subdivision regulations. And I don't recall a waiver from that requirement being requested or approved at preliminary plat. And then as far as natural gas service, I'm going to confess, I don't believe that has been installed. That is up to the developer and the gas provider, which would be the city of Fairhope in this case, to run gas out there.
Sure.
That's not a required utility in order to gain final plat approval.
Sure.
Chris, correct me if I'm wrong.
Buford, you got it all right.
Is there anyone else in the, oh, go ahead.
No, I just want to make sure you closed it.
Yeah, is there anyone else in the public who has a question or concern who'd like to speak to this item? Okay, then we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion or a motion.
Make a motion, we approve as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes.
Yeah, no, I think so, yeah, right, yeah.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance that Hunter's going to talk to us about. Do I need to read through the whole thing? I was very informal about that. I know you're going to describe it to us.
I can cover the details. This is a proposed amendment to Article 5, Section 1, special districts, and it would be adding an additional district and section. Ooh, hold up. There we go. Can everybody see that presentation? Okay.
Yes.
And let's get. Go. If y'all recall, this started, and I don't know if they're still on the phone with us. I did see, or on the call with us. There was an agenda item for a rezoning request to B4, and this started a couple of months ago, and there was some desire to come up with a solution for the residential properties on Greeno Road. You know, where there was an effort that didn't work out. So this is a proposal, and why that was tabled from the meeting was to pull off, talk to Chris we didn't want to put the planning commission or the applicant in a situation to ask for a zoning district that's not approved. So the zoning request may come back if this makes it through city council and approved and ask for that. So this is what we call the highway transitional district. I want to say first off and foremost, this is not an overlay district. That's actually in the language. This is not, if adopted by the city council and recommended by the planning commission, this would affect 0 people in the city. This will be a voluntarily asked for this type of district, just like somebody would come in and ask for B4, B2, or R2, anything along those lines. So this is adding a small section to Article 5, and then it does amend the use table and dimension table within Article 2. The use table, it would add a new column, Highway Transitional District, or abbreviated HTD. It closely mimics B4, but we're actually adding a few things. This chart doesn't fit on one page, so I'm kind of going through here. It does allow townhomes is one of the bigger changes from in the residential section. Civic, it's approximately the same. It of course allows offices and professional, and then it takes away a grocery store, for instance, because these are smaller lots, R1 and R2 lots that have historically been on a highway, but really don't have a home. So, and how does that move forward when everybody's saying that's not its highest use, or nobody wants to use it as R1 or R2 property today? So the use table is there. We can debate each one. I think it's pretty clear what we're proposing. We can add, remove. We did add one I wanted to call attention to because it's not in a B2. It's in a lot of the M1 and M2, which is our manufacturing district. But limited manufacturing is something we've added conditionally that would have to go through Board of Adjustment. But the intent there is something that the city's trying to encourage and entrepreneurships, especially related to the tech industry, that has maybe some manufacturing but doesn't have a byproduct. It's not, it's light, very assembling CNC or, so it, some things like that related to the computer industry. So it may be a good alternative. I can answer any questions on the use table if needed, but I'm going to kind of move on through. The dimension table in red was added, and it just says see article, the section itself for the dimensions. So we're getting to the teeth of it here. The intent of this, and I won't read verbatim, but the intent here is to provide an alternative to what single-family residential zoning districts along the along the highways, and it is state highways. So we are proposing this for not only 98 but 104 and 181, where it's zoned very specifically there, where it's within the corporate limits of the city of Fairhope, where we have zoning. This does not impact anybody in the planning or in the extraterritorial jurisdiction, so no worries there. This is also in between per a comprehensive plan where there are village nodes, commercial nodes. These are those areas in between those design or what those intents. I did highlight something here because the majority of these properties are going to be R1 and R2. As you see, that's in the intent, and I'd like some feedback here from the Planning Commission, is that do we want to be explicitly stating R1 and R2 properties, that has access to this, or is this something it doesn't matter? Maybe a B4 wants to go to this, or a B2 would like this district. So while the intent is for those historic residential, do we want to be restrictive in that sense?
I would not be. I like the idea of if somebody B2 wanted to downzone, then that would be great.
That was the initial thought.
And what about an area that is not residential? Maybe it's agricultural.
That's what he's saying.
An RA is something that we might handle that because of the size restrictions, so.
3 acre.
Yeah, it's under 3
less.
acres, after
But
3
have you-
acres.
Have you checked, are there lots that are on the green, they think got to be within, well, got a front on Highway 98, 104, 181, is that right? Location requirements, but is there anything that you've checked that's under 20,000 square feet? That's residential, because you certainly could have a residential property that's 10,000 square feet.
Under 20,000 square feet, you might, but I know there's at least 2, but I'm covering those with the lot, because the intent there, the way they kind of happened, throughout time, it's more of a driveway, it's 30-foot wide. So we don't want those to be, a zoning type, that's.
Well, I mean, it's an undevelopable, with setbacks, it's an undevelopable.
It's still a drive right now to
If it's a
another
lot of
development.
record, then that's another issue.
Yeah, and I want there to be enough room where we can actually, have some, the ones we looked at were too small to even accomplish setbacks. By the time you impose setbacks, there was no buildable area.
Well, yeah, and something like that is so non-conforming, it might be best dealt with a Board of Adjustments type of.
I understand, but that maybe is an exception, but if it's 18,000 square feet, that's under 20,000 square feet, that's a developable lot.
Yeah.
My question to you is, when you set a minimum like that, are we precluding somebody that's gonna get caught?
Potentially. There's no telling, what.
Now, how do we deal with that?
We can't solve every problem with this. This has been a debate for 21 years.
You told me that you could solve every problem.
Could they go to
I need a
the
couple
Board of
more
Ad-
months.
I mean, could they go to the Board of Adjustments and appeal to use this even though they don't meet the size requirement, perhaps? Can you do that?
I need to think that one through. The Board of Adjustment is there for a variance to the zoning code.
And keep
So
in
this
mind,
is
they
the
could
zoning
seek a different type of zoning.
Yeah,
Yes.
before, those.
That's true.
Those are still available. This is a specific one.
The lots that these people had that came to us a few
Met
months
this.
ago was 20,000 square feet, as I remember.
It was, this would have met that, anything. I'll tell you what I have checked, to be explicit, more Greeno, and they're 181, when you get out there, there's not a lot of zone property. So it's probably not gonna have too much of an impact there, because if they come in zone, they're gonna ask for, but even if they ask to annex in, and not, and the debate is, was it B2 or B4? Well, this is an option. So it's just another option for those folks that might fit their needs better.
Well, I'm
than
just
B4.
trying to figure out if there's gonna be an avenue for somebody that has a lot that is not within less than 3 acres or more than 20,000 square feet.
There would be an added step, a Board of Adjustment would give a variance to the zoning code.
As long as they've got an option, then that's,
Okay.
because up until this, there really hasn't been an option for anybody.
Well, and I'm not gonna ever say this is perfect. We might have to revise it in the future if there is somebody that got left out, but.
Well, as long as it.
We gotta do something. It's been 21 years.
As long as it's
Right.
recognized that there are potential issues.
Yeah.
The intent is, I guess the issue is, the intent is not to exclude anyone.
That's right. But not to,
Not to be as comprehensive as the overlay.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. So then that's where the development opportunities are another consistent with our vision as the city, in those commercial corridors. And then I explicitly state this actually in the code. Unlike other districts within the section that this finds its home, the Highway Transitional District is not an overlay district and does not affect any property owners other than those who voluntarily apply for rezoning to this district. Just want to say that again. And then we get into kind of specifics. So lot size is 20,000 square feet and under 3 acres, minimum of 20,000 square feet and under 3 acres. Our vision there is if you're 3 acres or more, you can go with a PUD, where those smaller lots don't have the option. Uses are listed in the use table. Rezoning to HTD may be conditioned so that uses permitted on appeal require a site plan. That's every piece of this from here on out is somewhere else in our zoning code. So we're not reinventing anything The location requirements, eligible lots must have a minimum of 100 feet on one side that fronts the right-of-way of US 98, 104, 181, and lie within the corporate jurisdiction of the city of Fairhope. To clarify that, corporate limits are our city limits, which differ from our jurisdictional, extraterritorial jurisdictions. So, dimension standards, from what's in your packet, we did, Chris reviewed and had some good feedback or good catch because we were debating this PUD thing and there was a part of this sentence that was left in. So what you see in red on the screen, we would like to remove and take to, if you so choose to vote this way, go to council with. But that A should read lot frontage shall be adjacent to the highway. Setbacks, 20 feet, 20 feet, 10 feet on the sides, 20 feet in the front and rear. Building height is 30 feet. Mixed use can build to 35 feet. Same stipulations we have in other areas of our zoning code for mixed use. Parking shall be located behind the front building line. And any freestanding building, single-use building, or tenant retail building shall have a building footprint, not have a building footprint larger than 8,000 square feet. That is in our zoning code, and it applies to anybody that's zoned business district, but the wording on that is zoned a business district, and this would not be in that. This would be a special district, not a business zoning district. So just replicating what's said elsewhere. This one comes up quite a bit. We're taking this language from the tree ordinance, but this is the 20 feet on state highways and special roads within the city that requires that 20-foot tree preservation strip. I want to be clear on this because this got mixed up a lot. We're not imposing an additional 20 feet. So you have a 20-foot setback already, and this is on Highway 98 and 104 is already in place. So this is, within that 20 feet, it just says, okay, you've got to keep this kind of in its natural state or improve it to a natural state. It's already there. We're just clarifying here, so it's more helpful, so it's not a surprise, because some people go to the zoning code and go, okay, what do we do? And then they spend a lot of money on a plan, and then we tell them, oh, have you checked the tree ordinance? You forgot about this. So this is just helping get it in front of people faster. And then G, any future rezoning to highway transitional districts may be conditioned so that the goals and intent of the comprehensive plan and Article 5, this section, and its intents of the zoning code are achieved. So that just like anything else we're doing, you've seen it, a lot of it tonight, there's conditions of approval. We're just saying that. There is one thing missing from here, and someone sent an email today and brought it to my attention, just like that, the 8,000 square feet references back to a business district. So too do the buffers, screening, where residential is adjacent to commercial is required, and that reference is a business district where this is not a business, so I would like to have a simple statement in here that where adjacent to residential property, a buffer is required, and I will get the section for that. Buford, you're at a computer. If you can be looking for that section as reference, I would appreciate it.
Especially just with its name as Highway Transitional District, I think we have to be really careful about how it transitions to if there's residential behind it.
Yep.
It becomes a buffer.
Hunter, if you would say again, which section?
The section that requires buffers, and it's mentioned a few places in our zoning. On the non-compatible uses that say that the section specifically that talks about commercial next to residential and what needs to be implemented. So there's part of that in the tree ordinance as well.
Well, that was my question, is just to be clear, the tree ordinance still applies, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so all that's still there,
It just references sometime a business district.
Okay, so we need to make sure.
And this isn't it doesn't say a special district next to, but it's use and its choices in there, and we can reference back to the use they choose.
So we can just go ahead and do this and tell you that you have the authority to add that
Is that we know we just had this one, so we don't want
Yeah.
to be too general. We need to be pretty specific what the,
Well, I mean, my concern is that we cover all those things that happen when you have business next to residential, which is parking lot lighting, and landscape buffers and buffering of parking lots.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
if all that gets integrated
Because
or not
you got a
excluded.
choice, either we're gonna have to table it till the
Well,
next
and
month.
I think there's an easier one here. We can just reference that section, so meet the requirements of every, of the.
Or could we?
Anything that with highway designated
required
highway
for-
changes must meet the requirements of article, and we'll get that as reference. Is that?
Article
Incompatible
5,
uses.
Section B, 2B is the screening for the zoning ordinance. And I'm happy to put that on screen if y'all need it.
Article 2B.
And
5, Section
You just need it included in this, stated right now in the.
And that, if y'all want to debate a minute and.
Well, I'm wondering if there's a way to just say, call this a business district, or, anything that's required of a business district would be required of, in the landscape ordinance, would be required of this too. Just,
Buford, can you give me that one more time for reference?
Okay, so this is the buffer requirements in the zoning ordinance. It's Article 5, Section B, Paragraph 2, Subparagraph B. So Bravo to Bravo.
That's under the CBD.
That's under CBD. Yeah, that's good.
I'm sorry, Article 4, Article 4.
Yes, okay, yeah, that's where I was thinking of. The screening, lighting, and landscape.
So just reference
Yep.
that.
Let's see.
I thought this was going to be a short agenda.
I needed that water.
We may need to bring coffee to these meetings. Yeah, I need a bit of water too.
Water and coffee.
Yes.
The screening in that 2B specifically says any district where commercial/industrial use.
It needs / residential.
Yeah,
Abuts a residential.
I mean, about if it was apartments or multifamily, I think we would also be concerned about the
That's
screening.
residential.
Yeah, so I mean,
What about some, for the purposes of this section and the tree ordinance, HTD will be considered a business district
that seems like it would.
or something to that commercial/business.
So if I can interject, Emily read it correctly out of the zoning ordinance, where the screening and buffering kicks in for multifamily, that's in the tree ordinance.
And that's where I think if we,
Do we still get covered though for multifamily?
Well,
It may be too small.
this area, this entire district is inside the city, so everything in the city is in the police jurisdiction, and the tree
So the
ordinance
tree ordinance
is
applies
effective in the police jurisdiction.
Okay.
So do we want to reference the tree ordinance?
Do y'all
I
want to
think he's
wait till
saying-
next month to do this and then you get it right, or?
Well, no, yeah, he's saying the tree ordinance is going to apply regardless, right? And so we just have to make sure we're not exempting this from the screening and landscape and parking requirements of the zoning ordinance, but by the fact that it has a funky name. So what you were saying sounded like it would work.
yeah.
I would cross-reference both,
Yeah,
just
I
for
think
clarity.
We do both, and then
So in addition to the text that's before you, the addition would be a specific reference to Article 4, Section 5, Article 4, Section B,
2B.
2, lowercase b, will be applicable in addition to the tree ordinance, to the highway transitional district.
So
we have to
what
add
Hunter
the-
was saying is that for the purposes of this, in that for B2B to clarify that this would be treated as a commercial or business.
For the purposes, we're basically saying for the purposes of screening, which is defined here in this section, this highway transition district shall be viewed as commercial, and shall meet this section and the tree ordinance. We can, if that's our intent, we can write it in a way
Yeah.
that you can adopt. Okay?
Sounds good.
All right, you don't want to talk about any other, do the public hearing, and we'll get that language kind of on the check.
Do we talk first and have the public hearing second?
Yeah, do y'all need to have anything to discuss, or go ahead and open the public hearing?
Yeah.
Is there anyone?
This is Harry Kohler. Just quick point of order. Do we still have a quorum? And can we approve this without a quorum?
Have we?
Everybody that's still online.
We can't see anything except for the
Have
slide.
people left the,
I believe I don't know of anyone that left.
Okay.
Harry-
My screen is showing just 3 folks involved, so obviously my screen's screwed up. I'm sorry.
No, you might be right.
No, we appreciate you. We're assuming all you guys are drinking coffee.
A lot of those
John?
other people weren't commissioners.
John's
I'm here.
John's on.
Okay.
There's no more.
So we
there's
have
only one other
6,
minor case.
and that's plenty.
We're almost to the end. Hang in there.
stay awake.
Okay, what are we
This is the
doing?
good stuff. They are wordsmithing,
Are
and
you
so.
opening the public hearing?
Yeah. Would anyone in the public like to speak to this matter? I don't know that anybody in the public has left, but we'll give them a second.
Make sure to unmute.
Mhm. Okay, I think we can close the public hearing, and I guess we're waiting on a motion for them to finish. For whatever it's worth, I'm kind of torn between buffering and screening, that you're trying to express that you're transitioning between the highway and residential.
I guess I'd reiterate just the main point to me for this highway transitional district. It's not going to directly impact anybody, but it's going to offer an additional option, one that may be viewed more favorably by the commission and the council for these properties that are currently, especially the ones zoned residential that want to be something else, because realistically, a lot of people don't want to be in a residence on Greeno Road moving forward. But I appreciate Hunter putting this together and the rest of the staff.
Absolutely.
We needed another option.
Yeah. Well, and it helps people who may not have the means to do a PUD, who just may
Right.
want to sell.
Well, and it technically applies to stuff that's under the 3 acres, which is the trigger for being able to do a PUD.
But I meant to ask this. I
Madam
believe.
Chair- I'm sorry. I was just going to address your comment regarding, you were saying you were torn between the screening or buffering. The actual section that they're referencing does say, if you'll let me read it in full, in any district where commercial/industrial use abuts a residential use, screening/buffering shall be required.
Okay.
Acceptable screening/buffering. So it does include both.
Okay.
What about multifamily?
No, that's what they're working on.
Okay. When we were first discussing, there was some discussion about even if you were above.
Not above 3 acres, but if
Okay.
you were zoned RA.
Okay.
Or if you had a different zoning other than R1 and R2, I said we didn't want to
Okay.
limit it to R1 and R2, but if you were above 3 acres, this wouldn't even apply to you.
Okay.
You would do a PUD.
I won't muddy the water.
you're-
That
yeah, if you're
was
over
one thing
3
that had been
acres.
brought up is, should we allow people over 3 acres to do it as an alternative to a PUD? And so I guess
No, they can just do a PUD and
Okay.
you can create whatever. This is for,
Okay.
basically this is for people that don't have enough land to do a PUD,
And they've been stuck.
and they've been stuck.
Yeah.
They're in no man's land for a
now
long
they
time. And we don't want them to go full B2 because then you wind up with Hamburger Hill, as Jeremy was saying earlier.
Yeah, so this is I appreciate them pulling it together as well.
and I'm gonna ask Chris a question on the spot here. We kind of have something.
That's what he's here for.
Yeah, but if this was what the planning commission adopted, knowing what the intent is this specific enough that if we need to tweak it between now and city council to meet that, would you be comfortable with that?
If the planning commission states that that's their understanding and they're just looking for a little wordsmith, I'd be okay with that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I can read this. For the purposes of Article 4, Section B2, B, and the City of Fairhope, let me start this over. For the purposes of Article 4, Section B2B, and the tree screening requirements of the City of Fairhope tree ordinance, highway transitional district shall be considered commercial/business.
Okay, so that covers
We're kinda
anything in the
going ahead,
district,
Bart.
whether it's multifamily or, perfect, that sounds,
Yes. Because when you look at the two documents, there's some problems. So that kind of gives us a general, and we will look and see how to fine tune that if we need to.
okay, with the goal of establishing appropriate screening and buffering.
As long as
It will be considered,
commercial/business.
Because the screening buffering
so whether
requirement.
it's used, the use is multifamily, it still would be fall under that.
Exclusively for purposes of that screening provision.
Okay, all right.
You want me to have?
Yes.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Yeah, so I have a motion to that effect. I have a motion to recommend to the city council that they approve the highway transitional zone
District.
as amended.
Second.
Any other discussion? I heard somebody.
Harry, did you have a comment?
I think it was
He was just saying district versus zone.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Don't do that on this next one.
I'm gonna check out on this.
It's our
This
last
one's,
one. Okay.
Next time, Rebecca, just email me, include me on the email too, so I can help with the wordsmithing before we get here.
This actually
That
came
was
from
not
a
my email.
resident,
Oh,
so-
it wasn't your email?
No, but I know who it was.
This was a resident that came in
I think-
last minute, so we're,
So Dowsey's out.
We appreciate the public comment because I think that's really useful.
Yep.
third one, H.
Okay. You're gonna,
If you want to read the next item on the agenda, I'll present.
okay, so Hunter's going to present the request for an amendment to Article 5, Section B of the zoning ordinance regarding the percentage of commercial square footage required on the ground floor for mixed-use buildings.
Okay, and this is one I think the planning commission has discussed before my time. But it's what happens with the streetscape. The intent is very clear of our zoning code comprehensive plan. The CBD is included to support the regional, it's a regional commercial node. So what happens there at streetscape and providing commercial heartbeat of the city, not just the city, but this area of the region is critical. And with markets change, and right now there's a great push for a multifamily in the CBD, which I think most of us are excited about. Bringing people downtown, supporting business is a great thing, but there was unforeseen consequences there where ground floor becomes parking, because that's the only parking requirement we have in the CBD is for those residential units. So what we've seen, and it's been happening for a couple of years, is a shrinking of the retail/commercial space on the ground floor. So what this amendment does, and it's highlighted in red on the screen, it requires a minimum of 50 feet of the gross floor area to be commercial.
50%.
50%, yes. Thank you.
Big difference.
And because we always debate how things are calculated, we actually put the way that should be calculated right in the note. So this would include parking garages,
service areas, if they're internal, it would include that. So you look at anything within the exterior walls, take the square footage, and 50% of that area should be commercial. There is a second, the last sentence there is an encouragement, and I don't know what the planning commission thinks on this, if it should be encouragement or a requirement, but it states retail and restaurants are encouraged on the ground floor adjacent to public streets. And there's 2 points there. The encouragement is not just commercial, but retail and restaurants, because as much as an office is great downtown, without balance, it doesn't add much to, drawing people to the area. So that's the first part. And then adjacent to public streets, is that enough, or fronting a public street? I think adjacent, why I chose adjacent, because there are some situations where alleys, or that's a one I haven't even thought about, but a good example. But also on the corners where maybe residential is across the street, and we want to have a little flexibility there. So, that's the thought on that last sentence, and of course anything else. If we did have a work session and and discussed this, so that's it. It's one sentence, or 2 sentences, one section. So if y'all have any questions, be happy, or additions.
Is this a public hearing?
This is a public hearing. It's a zoning amendment, so this will be a recommendation to the city council, but we will have to open the public hearing.
Okay. Do we have questions for him prior to it, or we discussed it enough at the work session? I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this? Who's still awake?
I don't think we have any more public.
There's not? Okay. We'll close the public hearing. Okay, do we have any further discussion or a motion? I mean, I appreciate the encourage, because I think some flexibility is good, and we don't know what other interactive public use there may be that.
Motion.
Second.
Move that,
You seconded
I thought I heard
it before you finished
motion.
the word motion.
we make a recommendation to the city council to approve SC.
Motion, the other one, somebody said second.
Second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right.
Great job, Rebecca. You stepped in real well.
We got 2 more.
Yeah, not done yet.
2 more quick ones.
I'll try not to break up. Okay, so.
What is that?
Has the subdivision.
And so Hunter, if you could unshare your screen.
Oh, I forgot that second
The
page.
signed wetland buffer. How many people do we have when we started? Down to 3.
Oh.
Okay, commissioners, this is Buford back with you.
Yeah.
This is super simple, and so the amendment language is in red. Basically, the subdivision regulations has not included an explicit specification for wetland buffer signage. So this amendment accomplishes 2 things. One, for major subdivisions, it makes an explicit specification. For minor subdivisions, it makes an explicit specification for the wetland buffer signage. We reserve the right to require the more restrictive signage if we think the intensity of the application requires it on a minor subdivision. But the origin of this, commissioners, is that in many cases, on a minor subdivision,
Buford, I'm gonna
where there's a
interrupt you for a
delineated
second.
wetland, the permanent signage is just a bit of a difficult requirement. So this gives the option of having basically a temporary sign, so that way staff can verify the wetland has been flagged in the field before a final plat is signed.
And Buford, these virtual meetings have one challenge. We can't see one another. I think everyone's read this one. If I'm reading the reactions right, they're ready to vote.
No, I've got,
He has-
go ahead, Buford, finish up, and then I've got a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, I must have been misinterpreting that one.
Well, and I guess my final comment, Commissioners, is that in the past, we've had a couple of instances where an applicant would ask for a waiver from this requirement, and there really was no alternative. So what this does is creates an alternative. It creates an alternative where it's more appropriate to mark the wetland, so that way staff can verify that it has been flagged in the field before we sign the plat. I mean, the ultimate thing here is that you have these wetlands delineated and marked on a plat. That's the primary function. But if you have a 1 or 2 lot minor subdivision, and we know that it's been marked and we know that it's been flagged in the field before we sign the plat, and if the intensity doesn't rise to the level of requiring the more permanent sign, this is a little bit more reasonable option for some citizens. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, here's a real quick comment. This is called the KISS method of dealing with an issue like this. Keep it simple, Sally. And the issue is make it applicable across the board. And your 100-foot distance between Buford being a consulting forester and being in those swamps all the time, all I can tell you is you need to include just something in there that line of sight. It's got to be flagged and it's got to be marked, line of sight. Because when you get a homeowner, you want permanent flag, you want permanent signage. Whether it's a small whatever, but just keep it simple. Make it just one standard for everybody. They know what they've got to do, but you've got to be able to see between sign and sign, because when a landowner goes in there, a homeowner that buys a lot, and the sign is on somebody else's on either side of him, the next thing he's going to do is back a dump truck down there and start dumping fill dirt in the bottom. So they just got to have a line of sight, and that's all I got. It just needs to be the same across the board. It's not an expense, it's not a big deal. If you're going to do it temporarily, put a sign up there. Just make it permanent. That's it. That's all we got.
Well, do we need to table this to give it a little more, for him to revise? I mean, I guess we.
Do you want to revise it, Buford?
Commissioners, I don't want to argue about it tonight, and if it's the pleasure of the commission to table this, proceed. I'm very cautious to put something in there without a hard and fast specification, because line of sight can be any number of different numbers. So I conceptually agree with the commissioner, but I'd prefer to keep it 100 feet if we could.
And
certainly,
I'm going to agree with Buford here. And one thing I know, common sense sometimes sounds good, but when you get in with folks that want to cut corners and sometimes we have to work toward the lowest common denominator, and having a specification we can rely on is very helpful. And what we're trying to,
wait.
sign specific. I mean, what exactly it should state, instead of debating on how it's visible with every 100 foot, or the arguments there.
Do we have to make sure it's on every lot of a subdivision?
This is what you got to understand. It's just like painting a boundary line, property line. When you flag I can't tell you how many wetlands I flag and how many I've got to do, but it's got to be line of sight. You put a sign up. All that means is when you're flagging the line, you're cutting the line as you're going along. You just got to be able to see. You can see 100 feet once you cut that line out, but you're going to put your signs up 100 feet. It's not a big deal. There's really no other thing associated with it. You're not going to walk in there and put a sign up right here and then come out of the wetland and walk away around here and put another sign up.
Right.
You're going to flag it all the way through anyway.
But what we're trying to do here, we weren't doing family subdivisions, okay? So the family style subdivisions, we weren't doing. And all of a sudden, we're now reviewing those at the planning commission meetings, and they're having to meet the subdivision regulations. And there's a sign cost, as it's stated, because it's permanent, it's for bigger developments.
There's a sign cost?
There's a cost to replicate the signs based on the sign spec. I mean, that's, we've seen the price tag. If you have to, what, $2,400 for signs? On a single, yeah, they're
for
metal.
What?
They're metal signs.
So that's what they,
I feel a little, there is a.
I hate to see where y'all buying your signs.
You know, that is, every subdivision that we've done in the past has those signs, and we want them to be permanent, we want them to be out there. So the city wrote a specification years ago.
Okay, all right, look,
So we're just
let's make this real simple. I don't agree with you, you don't agree with me, whatever y'all want to do, whoever's got the majority, kind of like what's going to happen on the 6th of January in Washington DC, isn't it? All right, so whoever's got the majority. Well, I don't agree with you, and I don't agree with you either, Buford. And,
we're okay with that.
So there you go.
I thought the point that if you end up with a subdivision and there is not a wetland sign on somebody's lot, that's a good point. Can we add a requirement that as lots are subdivided, there needs to be even if it was a less than 100-foot lot, and there's a wetland sign here, and there's a wetland sign here, and on your lot, there's nothing, you know.
They don't want to put signs up on small subdivisions though.
No, but that's.
we are.
That's
We're just
what this
giving them an
is.
option. The only intent here.
They're
Keep
just
it simple,
cheaper.
stupid.
We're
Is it
trying.
saying- is it just nothing?
I
Sally's
think Buford and I
a
get it. It's simple. It's simply an option for these folks to have a sign. We're not creating.
It's just a
something-
corrugated plastic sign instead of
it's a
a
cheaper
steel
option.
sign.
Yeah.
So it'll go away eventually.
Without a
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but down here around the saltwater, corrugated plastic sign would be a heck of a lot better than
It might last
than a
longer
steel
than
sign. Anyway, okay. I've said my dude.
vote
Whatever
on it.
y'all want to do.
Okay. Do we need to do anything to ensure that there's not a lot with no sign on it?
People assume anything.
She makes a good point.
People will assume anything.
Every 100 feet or every lot?
Or every lot, one per lot.
Yeah.
One, minimum of one per lot or every 100 feet, whichever's less.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Awesome. Yes.
I'm good with that.
Buford, you gotta fit that
Buford, are
in
you
there?
okay with that?
Buford left.
I am not gonna, I'm not gonna argue against anything at 8:15.
Wait, if y'all don't mind, this one is not pressing. This doesn't go to council, so if y'all wouldn't mind, let us tabling that and figure out a way to put that in there instead of writing that one right now.
Sure.
We'd be happy to do that. You okay with that, Buford?
No, I'd like to stay for another
Want me to
hour
come
and
sit with you when you
wordsmith
write
it.
it, Buford?
Whatever
She
suits
likes
you
being
tickles
called
me to death.
madame. She wants to stay here for a while.
Yeah, nobody calls me that at home.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna table this for the next.
If that's the.
Do we need a motion to table it? Okay.
Yeah, I
Do we have a,
move, we table SD 21.5 subdivision regulations text amendment.
do we need to open a public hearing before we do this? Did I do, okay, great. Do we have a second?
Second.
I mean, if they're
Have
gonna
to,
do it
but-
again, you don't have to.
No, it'll be back.
Okay,
And there's nobody else on the public.
okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Who was the second? I'm sorry.
Me.
Who made the motion?
John.
There you go, John, you the man.
All right, so I do believe we have one item of old business left on the agenda.
Yes.
Sorry.
And this is one page. I think this
I
one's
lost
easy.
it in my,
Oh, I got 30 minutes on this.
Buford, if you wouldn't
No
mind, relinquish control there. The last one. While Joe's pulling this one up, this in November, Fairhope Falls West, a village subdivision came before the Planning Commission, and there was only 3 conditions of approval on this, and one of them really hamstrung the developer, the way it was written, and we had a reason for or proposing it that way, and there's since, I think, been revised, and we're okay completely with this revision, but it was an approval, a condition of approval that the Planning Commission made, and we didn't want to overstep the boundary. So the request is, as you see on the slide, there's 3 conditions of approval.
The last one was specific, the no subdivision applications, which is preliminary plat applications, shall be accepted until all conditions have been satisfied. And the one that really got stuck was a replat signed and recorded. Real estate business, I don't need to get in the details of, but the proposed language, and staff's okay with this, instead of 3 wording, the 3 would be revised to read, construction of any future phases shall not begin until the replat is recorded. We're okay with that language if the planning commission, this is a public hearing because we're amending something.
It is a public hearing? Okay.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? Or should I open the public? We open the public hearing. If anyone wishes to speak to this, and if there's nobody on the call, I'll close the public hearing. Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right,
So wasn't that easy, Buford?
we can adjourn. Do we?
Good night, everybody.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
First, motion.
Can I second?
Second.
All
I'll
in,
second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Oh, I don't think I want to adjourn.